As smiles appear on the soldiers' faces, Wu Dongxian suddenly starts to cough violently. If I become strong enough, there won't be so many pitiful people in this world. At the same time, inside copy number 2, Wu Dongxian is continuously using magical techniques to heal countless soldiers. I want to kill you, Demoness. Let's die together. It was an age of kindred souls, but the naive girl blamed everything on her own weakness. You deceived me, you used sorcery on me. In the next moment, Aina began to bleed from all 7 orifices due to the backlash of her power. Even Aya showed no hesitation as she threw her down. You deceived us, you damned woman. However, his invincible power had lost its effect at that moment. The soldier's eyes were filled with anger. No, that's not right. This isn't our wish. My wish is clearly to go home and get married. Isn't your wish to sacrifice your lives for me? Clear the way. Use your bodies to hold off that Taoist. As long as I live, there's still a chance for a comeback. The soldiers held onto their legs tightly. Holy maiden, I want to live too. Save me, she said, watching the soldiers' crazed expressions. Aina's face was full of disgust. Let me go first. Upon hearing this, Aina pointed to the city wall. We'll climb over the wall. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder. At this moment, they had arrived at the city gate, but the gate was tightly blocked by soldiers with the same thoughts. You bunch of useless fools. Get out of my way quickly. I am a centurion. Then she jumped onto Aya's back. Quick, take me away from here. By the time Chen Simon came to his senses, he found that the remaining woman beside him had already vanished without a trace. Don't mention hitting me again. But in that moment, Aina unexpectedly sensed a terrifying aura from that man. Aina opened her mouth. Fear finally overcame everything. Aya, take him out for me. But after waiting for a while, there was still no sound behind her. Aina turned around in confusion. But she found that Aya, who always obeyed her, was now trembling uncontrollably. I haven't lost yet. As long as you die, I still have a chance to win. Aina suddenly looked up. Her finger pointed at the moon. Luyu looked down at him from a high vantage point. It seems you're not too stupid after all. If it weren't for me, your cleverness and ruthlessness would have gone far. Aina smiled coldly. So now do you see how foolish your so-called clever plan of throwing corpses into the city was? Aina clenched her teeth. The plague on those corpses posed no threat to us. You deliberately set up Songdu City to look like a dead city, to lure us into a trap. The soldiers on both sides were already locked in battle. Only then did Aina finally realize. You're saying you used the plague to take revenge on our army? This was all part of your plan from the start. Luyu let out a cold laugh. At this moment, he was shocked. Master 2, did you foresee all of this? That's why you were preparing alone in the camp earlier? That's why you made those preparations? At this moment, in Replica 3, I suspect that among the soldiers in Songdu, there might be experts in plague manipulation. Li Tianyuan was startled. If we had followed the plan I proposed, we would have likely fallen into the enemy's trap by now. Their conversation was overheard by someone hiding behind the tent. So I suspect. Upon hearing this, Li Tianyuan couldn't help but widen his eyes. Are you implying that this plague was man-made? Zhuge nodded. I'm fine, hurry up and transport the injured. Just then, a voice suddenly came from behind Zhuge Sha. Surly, I've discovered something strange and I want to report it to you. There is a slight fluctuation of the square breath on all the patients affected by this plague. Li Tianyuan was at this moment unable to understand my thoughts. Sighing, a passing soldier looked at him with concern. Sir, are you alright? Li Tianyuan shook his head. Who are you? The man's deep voice rang out. In Songdu City, during Qi training, Master Luyu, a Taoist priest, is skilled in the art of controlling plagues. At the same time, inside Instance 1, he was willing to sacrifice countless soldiers' lives to storm the city gates. But just as he led his army into the city, he discovered his so-called victory. It has always been nothing but a joke from the beginning to the end. Aina looked in fear at the old man not far away. The alternating screams finally brought Aina back to consciousness. Soon, a thunderous sound rang in her ears. It was armed soldiers to the teeth. At this moment, the man behind them suddenly spoke. You finally made it. To seize the throne. Yet she couldn't understand what she saw. Even if there was an outbreak of plague, the city wouldn't be this quiet. Suddenly, a few piercing sounds in the air revealed the answer to her. The soldiers behind her fell one after another. The orderly troops quickly charged through the city gates. Aina, even more excited, rode her white horse at the forefront of the army. But soon her smile would fade from her face. In front of her, there wasn't a single trace of a living person in the town. Aina pondered for a long time. Chen Siming was also a bit surprised. I didn't expect us to win so easily. Aina came before the army. All troops, listen up. The army erupted into an astonishing cheer once again. A few minutes later, the city gates slowly opened under Aya's almost superhuman strength. Seeing this scene, the army erupted in cheers of victory. Prepare for the siege. In the blink of an eye, Aya has already appeared behind those city guards. Suddenly, there were two loud bangs. The heads of the city guards exploded. Soon, a fierce fire ignited on the city wall. In the next moment, Aya was ready. All her strength gathered at her feet. With a whoosh, the moment Aya burst out, a cloud of dust rose. Then she ran wildly up the vertical 90-degree city wall. Only a handful of people are left moving them. Judging by the time, the plague must have already broken out in the city. Aina immediately instructed Aya to climb over the city wall, to open the city gate from the inside. In my opinion, Songdo City won't hold out much longer. When the first batch of bodies was thrown down, they still pretended to be on high alert. Now a day has passed, and the walls are filled with bodies. Aina wiped away non-existent cold sweat. These soldiers are really troublesome. If they relax even a little, they mess up. Chen Siming stepped out from behind him. Good thing for that spinster's ability. You can go home and get married. The manipulated general stiffly turned his head. That's right, I can do it. Then he walked step by step toward the head test vehicle. I can do it, I can. How can I do this? Ayan's devil-like voice echoed in her ear. Continue giving orders. Have you forgotten your wish? As long as you finish this battle, are actually his most loyal soldiers. The longsword issuing commands falls from his hand. In the end, he can't take it anymore, and kneels before those fallen soldiers. Those are all my soldiers. Despite this, the general outside the city is still shouting to fire. As commands are given one after another, the general finally can't hold back his tears. Those things treated as cannon fodder. What flew through the air were cold, lifeless bodies. In an instant, flesh infected with plague exploded on the city tower. At this moment, chaos erupted on the city tower. Inside, terrified screams were heard, and the recognition of the dragon vein was obtained. Aina went as far as to throw the plague-ridden corpses into the city. The soldiers on the city gates saw the incoming projectiles. Shouting to hide, the guards quickly realized that it was not a shell at all. Mechanically, they were placed into the feed carts box. In the terrified eyes of the soldiers, a sharp sound pierced the air. The plague-infected soldiers' corpses were shot into the city like raindrops. Victory was achieved. I wouldn't dare. My words also made Xiao glance at me slightly. At the same time, in the third scenario, two soldiers were bagging the bodies of those who died from the plague. That is my attitude towards my soldiers. Does that explanation satisfy you? Facing my unwavering gaze, Li Tianyuan once again felt the so-called dragon's might. In the end, he yielded to me. Taking them along will only hold us back. Our army is marching. Your Majesty, why must you bring them? I turned my gaze back at him with intensity. We do not abandon or give up. Stop and remind them. When we retreat, we must take all the plague soldiers with us. Those who are too sick to walk must be taken as well. Li Tianyuan shouted. No, those infected soldiers will most likely not survive. The Emperor's scheme definitely can't be this shallow. There must be other figures involved in this. Unfortunately, my espionage and military strategy is far less than in court intrigues, so I still cannot step into your Majesty's realm of thought. Suddenly, I thought of something. To put it bluntly, he's just running away because he can't fight back. If it's about escaping, is there really a need to be so passionate? You're saying the most cowardly things in the most domineering way. Li Tianyuan, however, fell into deep thought. Now morale is low. I'm preparing to retreat to Linsong. We'll wait for another chance to fight on the south bank of the Yangtze. The person beside him was fuming with rage. I thought this foolish ruler had some great plan. Morale is low. Without using sinister tactics, thinking we can take the city is nothing but a delusion. I looked at them seriously. What better plan? It's a long-standing rule in siege warfare. The attacking side must have at least 10 times the forces of the defenders to guarantee victory. And now, not only are the Shepherd Army's forces lacking, they're also plagued by disease. I raised my hand and shouted sternly. Enough, in the shocked gaze of Li Tianyuan. But I was smiling. I've already come up with a better plan. Li Tianyuan was dumbfounded. This plan is too vulgar. It is not the act of a wise ruler. Li Tianyuan argued fiercely. Your Majesty, this is war. This is not the time for mercy. The next moment, the hall fell into silence. I looked at Li Tianyuan in shock. You're truly a living king of hell. Even Yama would need a tattoo of you. I directly vetoed his proposal. Then tell me how to fight. Chen Siming is completely bloodthirsty. The 5,000 defenders in Songdo City. Why not just infect them all with the plague? We just need to use catapults to launch the bodies of plague-infected soldiers into the city. How can we fight? The man across sneered. Why not fight? If you ask me, taking Songdo is easier than ever. Aina stared fiercely at Chen Siming. Make sure the entire army takes it. After saying that, he turned his head again to look at the dying soldiers. On the other side, inside the third dungeon, Aina said quietly, 20,000 people attacking a city of 5,000. And they are bringing so many infected patients. You will all be saved. Then he shouted to everyone behind him who knew a bit of healing magic. Come help me save people. He immediately wrote out a prescription. Everyone, prepare the medicine according to my prescription. He looked at the mission before him with unwavering resolve, even though he knew, I can't just stand by and do nothing. Then he reassured everyone, as long as I'm here. In a daze, he seemed to return to the past. Once upon a time, it was just like now, but with just my strength alone. Facing thousands of patients is like a drop in the bucket. All those infected with the plague were drawn to this voice. One by one, they came to Wu Dongxuan's side. Marshal, save me. I want to live too. Wu Dongxian showed a glimpse of Peking opera. After casting the spell, the veteran miraculously sits up. I'm actually healed. Then he looks at Wu Dongxian with a face full of shock. The living immortal marshal is truly a living immortal. We're soldiers, barely clinging to life. Wu Dongxian walks up to a veteran. Under the veteran's surprised gaze, he extends his right hand. The next moment, a blue light glows from Wu Dongxuan's right hand. Tanden's supreme water technique. At the same time, in another instance, when Wu Dongxian saw the scene before him, he instantly froze in place. In front of him, in a deep voice, Your Majesty. I raised my head, somewhat confused, and saw him bow to me very seriously. Your humble servant has a plan. We can easily take Songdu. Then let me be the villain. Alright, help me conquer the world. Li Tianyuan stepped forward voluntarily. He chose to take responsibility for everything. He suddenly spoke, to turn the tide using the plague, a method to conquer Songdu. But that method is too cruel. The emperor is probably also hesitating about whether to die. Since that's the case, and the overall evaluation still ranks me the highest, then what do I do? Watching my continuously changing expressions, Li Tianyuan instantly understood something. Did the emperor think of it too? Just thinking about it makes me happy. But soon I realized, if this is a hellish start for me, doesn't that mean the other competitors' tasks are the same as mine? If they fail their missions too, I put on a bitter expression. But inside, I sneered. At least we've done something good. This is my favorite kind of start in this region. Failing the mission so easily. If we're doing a siege, it's better to be cautious. The attacking forces need to be more than 10 times the defending forces. Our forces were already stretched thin. Now with this plague added. Upon hearing this means that the Dragon Vein has grouped us into the same faction. So, the so-called trial is just a war-themed dungeon, right? This Dragon Vein sure knows how to have fun. Xiao spoke up. I once followed the late Emperor and Prince Tusu, and have some knowledge of military affairs. The morale of the soldiers is low. What should we do next? Please decide, Marshal. Li Tianyuan whispered, the Lichi exam should be testing our ability to conquer the world, and there are no other people here. But it's not absolutely impossible. Suddenly, a soldier spoke up, saying our army is infected with a plague. Currently, nearly 5,000 people are feeling unwell. They are experiencing vomiting and diarrhea. The army's doctors have no solutions. The hurting army has 20,000. Both sides have sufficient military supplies. They can withstand a war of attrition lasting several months. If we only consider the number of soldiers and equipment, taking down Songdu city will be extremely difficult. The Shepherd army, led by Marshal Bai, is stationed on the northern bank of the river, and 20 miles further north from the Shepherd army's camp, a massive city stands in between. This is the city of Songdu, which we are going to attack. Songdu city has a garrison of 5,000. Soon, that voice started to speak about the mission to lead the Shepherd army to capture Songdu city. Li Tianyuan looked at the Shay River in front of him. He immediately understood the current situation. At the southernmost part of the map, there is a wide Linchang River. Looking down, I realized that my body had actually turned into armor. The surroundings had completely changed as well. At that moment, a guard rushed in. Marshal, please begin the 3 armies uprising, because among the competitors, someone obtained the Emperor's aura, triggering the subsequent trials of the Emperor's dojo in advance. Close one mouth. When I opened my eyes again, I found that my body seemed to have become a bit heavy. I suddenly understood. This is the trap set by the system for me. You better not let me find you. Otherwise, I'll feed it to you. At this moment, the mechanical voice sounded again. Respond, host. The Emperor's halo has no effect. However, it can make the host more noticeable in a crowd. Just like an emperor, hearing his prolonged voice, gain the blessing of the Dragon Vein. Emperor's halo. Aren't you supposed to be unable to speak? And what is this Emperor's halo? Can it increase my combat power? What the hell is this thing? Don't shine that on me. At that moment, the wristband suddenly emitted a sound. Congratulations, host. The host has just achieved excellent results in the Dragon Vein temperament test. I suddenly took a step to the side, trying to dodge the golden light's shine. Who knew that the golden light would follow me directly? I was left speechless. I made a friendly gesture in the air. He is the infamous former national traitor, Li Tianyuan. No wonder he has the qualities of an emperor. Now that I see it, it really lives up to its reputation. At this moment, everyone's attention was drawn to me by that golden light. I only considered the second layer, but he actually managed to do it in the atmosphere. Li Tianyuan truly is terrifying. At this moment, someone started whispering about the dance. Do you know who this is? You really are something. Li Tianyuan turned around stiffly. He stared hard at the rebellious one in front of him. Aina was equally shocked. As fellow travelers, unexpectedly, my reckless actions were recognized by the Dragon Vein. Hearing the Dragon Vein's evaluation of me, Li Tianyuan shouted in surprise and excitement. Then he quickly walked toward me and gave me a heavy slap on the back. In the next moment of grandeur, a beam of golden light enveloped me. My originally proud expression disappeared in an instant. Damn it, I was supposed to be the rightful emperor, but I tried everything to tarnish my own name. Or you can ask me to leave. That voice sounded again. Good fortune is with us. Win people's hearts. Gaining the world through people's hearts. Establishing words and actions with the world. Upon hearing this, I secretly feel proud. I just collected so many treasures. I should have been eliminated, right? Now I'm leaving on my own. Look to the master, little Li. Fearless of the emperor's temperament, eliminated. Embracing the world, yet my heart is as calm as water. The aura of a ruler. Leaving the city. I looked down at the wristband. I shouted in my heart, Deben, is it you? I've been waiting so long. Yet the wristband didn't make a sound. Then that voice echoed in everyone's ears, lost in worldly desires. It eliminated nearly 70%. At this moment, a mechanical voice sounded in everyone's ears. The emperor has arrived for the trial. Abandon the trial upon hearing this voice. I stood frozen as if struck by electricity. How could you just be gone like this? Wu Dongxian glanced at the people still alive behind him. There were a total of 158 people who entered here. Now, there are less than 50 left. Only one trial. Those rooms were already blocked by the boulders. Then I looked at the blood seeping from under the boulders. I felt an overwhelming sense of desolation. My dear rebels, you are indeed the pillars of my nation. Those fools immersed in the financial report finally realized something was wrong. There was no time to dodge. The boulders fell on them. The screams echoed endlessly for a while, until the screams gradually faded away. I thought this Li Tianyuan had a bit of an emperor's aura. Now it seems he is nothing special. Did I misjudge him? Suddenly, the entire palace began to shake violently. Huge stones kept crashing down from the sky. Even that foolish woman who traveled here with me has a whip as well. I glanced down at him. Don't think too much. This is for us to use together later. Wu Dongxian was sizing up my back. Entrusted to the dragon. What a measure this is. Even the late emperor never treated me like this. As for what was given to Wu Dongxian and Zhuge Sha, it was 2 secret manuals on the art of spells. Xiao looked at the broken blade I tossed over. He was completely stunned. This can't be what Li Tianyuan is looking at. The dragon pattern sword in his hand. His heart was filled with mixed emotions. Compared to what's in my treasury, this is nothing. The only thing that might interest me is the Maria Ozawa on my phone. Shortly after, I ran back under everyone's dumbfounded gaze. I flashed a confident smile. I carefully selected gifts for all of you. Suddenly, I looked down at something. Turns out it was a bunch of idiots killing each other over treasure. I couldn't help but sigh. For this pile of junk, is it really worth it? I looked around. I cleverly thought, if this is a test of the dragon vein, then all I need to do is act a bit greedy. I'm sure I would lose quite a few points. It's destined that I have no chance with the throne. It seems there are treasures here too. Li Tianyuan frowned slightly. As the ruler of a nation, what treasure have I not seen? Why would I reveal my greedy nature at this moment? This is the test of the dragon vein. You are getting involved in these matters. Do you not want to be the emperor anymore? I ignored him. Instead, I turned and entered another treasure vault and picked up a bunch of junk. Wu Dongxian looked at me, dumbfounded. What the hell are you doing? Did you not hear what I just said? As he spoke, he pointed above his head. By then, I was already holding a pile of precious treasures. I don't understand what you're saying. Clearly, as the ruler of a nation, you possess endless wealth and glory, yet you willingly humble yourself. I scoff at all of this. I saw through those petty tricks long ago. Wu Dongxian was just about to agree with me, but the next moment, his expression changed. What the hell are you holding in your hands? One must possess the demeanor to match it. Being used for a bit of petty gain ultimately makes one just a small player. It seems this is the first test of the dragon vein. We must stay vigilant along the way. And there were warriors immersed in unparalleled martial arts. In a short time, the myriad aspects of the human world are vividly displayed. Wu Dongxian seems to have anticipated this, to gain the dragon vein's recognition. With all this, why search for a dragon vein? He pointed to the rooms behind him. Aren't you going to take a look? When they reached the doorways, they saw two groups arguing over the ownership of this place. We then walked towards the sound. Although we were somewhat prepared, we were still shocked by the scene before us. All those people were immersed in countless glistening treasures, unable to extricate themselves. They were shedding tears of excitement. Then I heard a burst of laughter. Everything belongs to me. At the end of the Yuan dynasty, I looked in the direction of the voice. It seems we've encountered a situation. The Golden Gate unexpectedly closed by itself, completely vanishing into the desolation. Looking at the resplendent surroundings, I couldn't help but marvel at how extravagant the builders must have been. We haven't even entered yet. Could very well trigger some mechanisms. Your Majesty is wise. After ensuring that everyone was inside, I finally spoke up to set off. As our figures disappeared through the Grand Gate, gave him a disgusted glance. I'm not in a hurry. What are you in such a hurry for? Li Tianyuan explained to me, lost in his own thoughts. That's right, entering recklessly now. It would be best if you could get the dragon vein. Help my former country fall hard. Suddenly, I turned to the side, my eyes staring blankly. A little self that seemed ready to kill them all, and a group of inexperienced rebels rushed in eagerly. Hearing their incredibly smug laughter, I remained utterly unmoved. In fact, I was cheering them on in my heart. Go ahead and grab it. A massive golden gate slowly opened. The moment I saw that grand gate, I had my answer. This is the dragon vein. Someone shouted, charge. Are you lying to us? At that moment, a heavy sound came from behind Wu Dongxian. A giant golden figure appeared before everyone. At that moment, everyone had a look of shock on their faces. When I opened my eyes again, everything around me had turned into a desolate wasteland. So, could a place as barren as this really have a dragon vein? Even the leaders of the volunteer army came to question Wu Dongxian, saying how could such a place have a dragon vein? Just at that moment, Wu Dongxian suddenly stopped, smiling as he looked at me. We arrived, and in the next instant, I felt a bright light enveloping my vision. They will definitely get lost. Setting up the headquarters near the dragon vein in advance. This way, no matter who seeks the dragon vein, they won't escape his sphere of influence. Truly a brilliant design. Before the chaos of the world, Wu Dongxuan's eyes burst with a golden light. In an instant, the surrounding scenery began to change. I was astonished in my heart. If the rebel army comes by themselves, the time was almost right. It was time to head to the dragon vein. Upon hearing this news, I felt a bit uneasy as well. After that, we arrived in another place. The time for you to believe shouldn't be that short. At that moment, a voice interrupted us. It turned out the rebel alliance had already gathered. They were ready to start searching for the dragon vein at any time. Wu Dongxian looked at me. I keenly noticed a change in his expression. This old guy is definitely imagining things again. So I quickly explained. I just sealed off his abilities, that's all. Wu Dongxian was the first to choose. At that moment, the same thought crossed everyone's minds. Time is shameless. Li Tianyuan looked at me with admiration and respect. As expected of His Majesty, he subdued Wu Dongxian and the demoness with just his physical body, eliminating two major threats for the nation. But the gazes coming my way left me feeling very confused. Everyone was looking at me with a strange expression. Then they turned their gaze to Aina, who was behind me. Her face was flushed red, as if something had happened. The screams coming from the cave grew louder and louder. It was all settled in just one night. After a night of storm and stress, Aina, I waved my sleeve, and flung open the dungeon door. That's fine for others, but don't you, as a fellow traveler, understand my feelings? Let me tell you, what I really want. After that, Aina's eyes grew wider and wider, and declaring yourself king, seizing the dragon vein. Is this what I want? Ever since I crossed over, everyone has been making assumptions for me. Seeing him go too far, I couldn't hold back any longer and grabbed him. I stuffed my 20-year-old stinky sock into his mouth. Aren't you a big talker? Let's see what you have to say now. Is this guy using his abilities on me? As he spoke, he began to take off his shoes, revealing his stinky feet. If you agree to follow me, I'll even lick your feet. You want to establish yourself as king, don't you? I just feel like this girl in front of me is such a fool. She really thinks I'm Li Tianyuan. She wants to stay here. Suddenly, I realized, this guy was just a simple moment ago. Why is he suddenly sober now? Aina turned her head and said, your goal is to eliminate me, right? You want to destroy the previous dynasty. Just one system. Looks like your sense of crossing over isn't very good, but meeting me is your luck. Do you want Big Sis to guide you? I suddenly had a bad feeling. Aina shows a smile. Did you lower your guard just because you know I'm a time traveler? Fell right into my skill. Do you even know what skill you brought with you when you traveled? I laid everything out for you. I just feel like I've found a kindred spirit. Back then, I spent every day gaming, drinking cola, and watching videos. Always full of energy. Now I eat, poop, and sleep. Feels like torture. Let's work together. Aren't you already pretending to be Li Tianyuan? Start using your own abilities. Even though you're a high official, it wasn't that great in ancient times either. So how did you know I was a reincarnator? Isn't it because you caught my... I felt a bit awkward for a moment. It just slipped out. He suddenly leaned toward me. I heard his words. I suddenly fell into silence. The king of the night. Isn't that silly fool just me? But Aina actually reincarnated as a baby. But I got too excited, and my milk tea got spilled. Then, to my astonishment, I realized the circuit breaker had tripped. When I came to my senses, I had already become a helpless baby. Then some idiot online, called Emperor of the Night, started trolling me, saying the present is so great. Anyone who wants to go back is an idiot. How could I resist? I directly started the game with that fool from the beginning. So I asked, how did you travel through time? Aina replied, that was a long time ago. One day, I posted a question online, asking which dynasty you'd most want to travel back to. Burning my calories. Ask how much sorrow one can bear. Out rapping and out playing basketball. I often let out a sigh. Yes, they are people from the same world as me. The symbols look like quadrants. Courtly jade liquor. 180 per cup. Haven't you seen the yellow river's waters descend from the sky? Flowing towards a sea of vibrant colors. Rising suddenly from my deathbed. I also felt a bit embarrassed. She seemed to misunderstand what I meant. But to be cautious, I decided to test it again. The chicken changes but I don't. It seemed like he was jealous. Even so, Wu Dongxian still prepared a room for me. I just noticed the furnishings here. Aina was shaking with fear. But then I made yet another outrageous provocation. Prepare a soundproof room for me. Wu Dongxian seemed a bit angry. He shouted, I know. I suddenly had a strange illusion. To the point where you're turning to a woman of another race? Seeing my increasingly serious expression, Wu Dongxian still chose the B clan. He left with a simple, you saved my life. Consider that my repayment. You bastard, how dare you control me? I stood in front of Aina. Don't kill him, he's still useful to me. Wu Dongxian had a big question mark flash through his mind. Am I no longer able to satisfy you? Wu Dongxian suddenly woke up. After waking up, he scanned the surroundings. He spotted me standing in the crowd, and that woman who was trying to control him. Wu Dongxian pointed at Aina. I raised my hand and told those ready to silence her to wait a moment. I still have something to discuss with her. This is just the right time to figure out what is going on. Meanwhile, due to losing control of Aina, an ally has turned into an enemy. I won't change symbols, I'll observe the quadrant. Let me make sure that the silly Bui who has been against me is actually also a traveler like me. Aina suddenly knelt down in front of me. Crying, she shouted that she is also from another world. This left everyone feeling puzzled. Why doesn't His Majesty get rid of this woman disrupting the Central Plains? Even Aina looked at me in surprise. I sheathed my sword. The concentration of the two-dimensional world is really high, brother. In a moment of despair, Aina suddenly shouted, Monkey Xiaojiao, the scheming frog, carrying a bag of rice. Upon hearing this, I forcefully stopped the scene where I was swinging at her. She kept trying to interfere with words, attempting to make me put down my long sword, but I remained completely unaffected. No one can influence my plans to destroy the nation. Then I swung the knife down without hesitation. Noticing my almost distorted gaze, Aina felt a fear that came from deep within her soul. That damn woman actually ruined the national destruction plan that I had worked so hard to devise. Damn it, Aina finally felt scared. Otherwise, I will cut out your tongue. I weakly look around at the scene, as if my whole body has been completely hollowed out. Return to the enemy's lair. I suddenly turned my head to look at the person who ruined my plan. Until the smoke and dust dissipate, Blacktooth has already collapsed helplessly before him. Aina's smile has also frozen on her face. A silver dagger appears at her throat, warning her not to say a word. Dare to steal my man? The badly injured Black Fawn, to protect Aina, actually stepped in front of him. Aina smiled happily, but was quickly engulfed by the huge flames in front of her. She shouted for Black Fawn. At that moment, Xiao had already appeared behind her. Aina didn't have time to turn around, when Zhuge Xiao was already in midair, holding a massive energy ball. The next second, Zhuge Xiao spat out a mouthful of purple flames. Xiao nervously glanced back. Then he hid behind Black Fong. A massive purple flame exploded on Black Fong, accompanied by lightning. Aina couldn't help but panic. A witch-like, teeth-gritting voice came from his throat. Who dares to steal my man? Upon seeing this, Xiao couldn't help but feel terrified. He immediately charged towards the black cliff, and reached for her chest. That righteous look instantly made me realize something. Zhuge Xiao would consider anyone who gets close to that man a mortal enemy. Suddenly, the scent of death filled the air. At that moment, Wei Yek Zhuge Shafen Kai began emitting faint static sparks. As he said this, he pressed my head firmly against Zhuge Xiao's lips. Sure enough, the originally unconscious Zhuge Sha suddenly opened her eyes wide, but soon, she fainted again from the intimate contact with a man. Xiao actively grabbed my hand. Faced with the hopeless scene before him, Xiao suddenly thought of a good idea. He immediately grabbed the unconscious Zhuge shark. With a swoosh, she threw it into my arms. Hurry and kiss this woman. Aina couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. Is this your sect leader? This is too funny. Even Xiao couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. He angrily shouted, "What the hell are you guys here for?" Black Crow turned to look at Xiao, waving their weapons as they charged ahead. However, in the next moment, they were taken out in an instant by the Black Crow. Those crazed followers stared blankly behind them, as only their unexorcised bodies remained unaccounted for. Those crazed followers were even more excited, shouting to kill them. Even I couldn't help but feel my blood boiling. If the national football team has this kind of feeling, there's no fear of not winning the World Cup. The five of them surged forward like dragons emerging from the sea. When can the CEO take the dog for a walk? If this keeps up, the faces of the five leaders won't hold up. It's time to end this meaningless farce. Let's start with this beast. I recognized this as the classic signal of the Blue Star people. But before that, we were still deadly enemies fighting to the death. At the moment I fell into crisis. 5 strangely shaped men blocked my way. The black duck, which had been striding forward, stopped in its tracks. In front of him were 5 guys wielding strange weapons. Just before dying, a person shouted, "Monkey burn 9, take it on your neck." Thus, he gained the chance to survive. His heart was filled with despair. "Your Highness, Tusu, I may never be able to serve you again. I fear I might die here." Just at that moment, realizing no one was fighting head-on, Xiao turned his head to look at the girl behind him, whose eyes had already rolled back. Only then did Xiao remember that Zhuge Sha had just been struck by Wu Dongchuan's lightning yesterday. I was attacked by a dog again today. Could it be that I'll die? I stood there, feeling confused. Then I heard him continue to tremble. This beast's strength and speed surpass mine. I can't beat him. Now, we can only rely on that little girl to control him with the captive. At this moment, there was only one thought in Zhao's mind. There's no way I can beat this guy. Impossible. The next second, the two crashed into the wall. I jogged over to them. But suddenly, Xiao shouted for me to get out of here. Suddenly, Black Fong opened its bloody mouth wide and bit down hard on Zhao's shoulder. Suddenly, Black Fong noticed that Zhuge Sha had stood back up. Then he bit Xiao and threw him straight out. "You really deserve it." Meanwhile, Xiao was being pushed back by the unsealed Black Fong. A hint of caution flashed in his eyes. It was like dealing with a rabid dog. In just a moment, he had already swung out dozens of strikes. Aina calmly watched the battle not far away. Heya was originally a child raised by wild wolves. His nature was extremely bloodthirsty, but now you have taken away the blindfold I used to suppress his wolf-like instincts. In the next moment, Heya suddenly disappeared from the spot. He then kicked towards Zhuge Sha. Xiao fiercely turned his head. He grabbed a dagger to block Li Chang from Heya. Heya shouted angrily. How did a perfectly good person turn into a dog? Even the onlookers around felt it was unbelievable. Why not be a good person? Why choose to be a dog? At that moment, Heya was looking at the 2 women who had knocked him away with a fierce expression. It pushes me back onto the throne. This makes Aina, who is also a time traveler, feel a strong sense of crisis. She immediately ordered Black Crow to eliminate me. Looking at the person in front of her, neither human nor ghost, Asha couldn't help but be stunned. Aina's lips curled up slightly. That's what makes it interesting. Clearly, I only want to be the king of the kingdom. But no matter what I do, I always draw others' attention. Does the Black-Tooth Beast transformation ring suppress transformation? Aina's eyes were filled with anger. In the next moment, dense fur appeared on Aya's head. Sharp claws sprouted from her fingertips, listening to the powerful roar behind her. Meanwhile, there were warning sounds. A sound echoed in Aina's ears. Aya stood up at some point, unaware. She radiated a faint green light. Zhuge Sha shouted to Xiao beside him. He was ready to continue the attack. Xiao reached out and stopped him, telling him not to act recklessly. That guy isn't as fragile as you think. Looking at the big sister revealed by the ruins, Aina finally reacted. What had just flown by was her little brother, Aya. She looked in disbelief at the 2 women across from her. I don't understand why those 2 insignificant girls were able to defeat Aya. The captive was still on his face. 3 words of silence were broken. With the sound of an explosion, Aya was also blown away. She didn't stop until she crashed into the camp behind her. It stopped less than 10 centimeters away from me. It turned out that Xiao Zhang's broken blade had pierced his arm. That just barely stopped him. Aya let out an excruciating scream. Meanwhile, Asha seized the opportunity to strike a few times. Kill him. The next moment, Aya suddenly stomped hard, and like a mad dog, lunged at me. I didn't even have time to react. Then the claw appeared right in front of me. At that moment, Xiaohe and Asha stood protectively in front of me. As for that foolish big brother, they all seemed incredibly wary of him. Ai's eyes burned as she looked at me, being protected, and shouted, Aya. Although I failed to control Wu Dongxue, he has temporarily been crippled due to the conflict of his two obsessions. Without his fighting power as an obstacle, with Aya's strength, there's no one left here who can match him. Let it be if you don't kill him. After all, he will head south to the Central Plains in the future. He deliberately spared his life for his wife. Then he glanced coldly in my direction. As for you, no matter what, I will kill you today. Still dreaming of competing with me? Suddenly, a cracking sound of bones echoed throughout the venue. The one who should have been knocked down, Aya, suddenly got back up. Aina looked at Li Tianyuan indifferently. Former emperor. As a master debater who dominates various forums. I only needed 3 sentences to turn the revered Wudao ancestor into a fool who could only babble. After saying that, I glanced over at Aina, still wanting more. You damn bitch, what do you think you are? Aina couldn't hold back any longer. I shouted, what the hell? The moment Wu Dongxian collapsed, I quickly rushed to her side and caught her. After saying this, I revealed an incredibly confident smile. When two obsessions in the heart clash and cannot be reconciled, the only choice left is to crash. Looking at Wu Dongxuan's seemingly foolish expression, I delivered the final soul strike towards Wu Dongxian. If you are controlled by that woman, it will inevitably lead to a situation where the northern barbarians invade, causing great suffering in the Central Plains. You tell me, who you saved? For example, in front of Wu Dongxuan's obsession, it is indeed his fixation in his heart. But his greater obsession is to establish a peaceful and prosperous world, and your ability cannot choose which specific obsession to amplify. Therefore, his obsession with establishing peace and prosperity has become even stronger now. Then, disregarding their surprised gazes, Wu Dongxuan's footsteps came to a sudden stop. Then he clutched his head and cried out in pain. Behind him, Aina loudly questioned why he wasn't making a move. I let out a cold laugh. I said to Aina, the obsessions in one's heart aren't necessarily singular. I stood up again without any fear. Wu Dongxian, if Tu Qianjun dies, will you be satisfied? What is your true wish? To annihilate the former nation, or to turn the Central Plains into a land free of war? Upon hearing my words, immediately, Wu Dongxuan's furious punch smashed down where I had just been standing. That woman's appearance scared me so much that I wet my shorts twice. Is this really still a person? Still. Has your resolve wavered? As Aina's voice echoed again, Wu Dongxian became enraged once more. That furious roar was something I could barely endure. I couldn't help but cover my ears. I found that woman staring at me with a dead-eyed gaze. Then I heard her shouting, Wu Daozu. Destroying the state of Qian has been your lifelong wish, hasn't it? Now the target is right in front of you. What are you hesitating for? Even though the damn woman can manipulate others with her words, I can also turn her words against her through loopholes. Just when I was feeling secretly pleased, I felt a murderous intent lock onto me. Looking back, upon hearing my words, Wu Dongxue suddenly woke up. A look of struggle flashed in her eyes. Seeing her reaction, I knew my words had an effect. Although I have seen through that woman's abilities, what should I do about this pure woman in front of me who has been bewitched? Suddenly, I reached out and stopped Wu Dongxue. That damn woman is no longer the former emperor. Killing her won't destroy the former nation, turning them into puppets controlled by their obsessions. Under Aina's constant instigation, Wu Dongxian has completely lost his mind. Step by step, he closed in on me. It made my scalp tingle with fear. Little did he know, not only did I not comply, I instantly figured out the truth about his ability. You know, everyone has their own obsessions. And that woman's ability is to amplify the obsessions in people's hearts. Then she manipulates them through words. Asha and Xiao both instinctively shielded us. At that moment, I finally understood what that woman's ability truly was. Just like me, she's an unfortunate soul who traveled from Blue Star. Yet he tried to use words to manipulate me into becoming his lackey. Immediately, he sharply turned his head and glared at Li Tianyuan. Aina was also a bit surprised by this. It was actually the former emperor of Qian. Didn't expect an unexpected surprise. Seemed like a puppet at that moment. He suddenly stopped moving. He kept repeating the words destroy the state of Qian. Under Aina's manipulation, Wu Dongxian suddenly had the idea to kill the former emperor of Qian first. Then he opened his captivating eyes. We have a common goal. And those alluring words kept repeating in my ears. It felt as if someone was wildly smashing a hammer against my head. In contrast, Wu Dongxian had already stomped him into the ground. To act so recklessly on my red sleeve army's turf. Isn't he being a bit too disrespectful to me, the Taoist patriarch? Aina smiled slightly and said calmly, we are not enemies. Aya already appeared in front of me, but his full force strike was blocked by Asha. This caused Aya to freeze for a brief moment. Before he could strike again, You don't have to go this far, do you? Who knew in her eyes? Just because I wasn't affected by his powers, I became a thorn in his side. In an instant, Aina shouted at Aya, "Stop! Go kill that guy who's running away over there." Hearing her words, I just felt my scalp tingle. I casually replied. I quickly took Shao away from here. A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. First, save yourself. But even though I was being very cautious, I was still spotted by Aina, who was watching me closely. In an instant, dozens of people had their necks snapped by him. Many didn't even realize what was happening. They just saw their bodies parting ways with themselves forever. Seeing that terrifying scene, Aina just softly called out, "Aya." My brother carries the whole scene. In the next moment, Aya let out a beast-like roar beneath me. Everyone was startled by this angry roar. Immediately, a figure charged into the crowd. He said, "I'm not targeting you. What I'm saying is that everyone here is trash." That instantly blew up the whole place. Hundreds of people went crazy, grabbing weapons and charging at Aina. But facing their assault, Aina smirked. "It's not just you. I'm saying everyone here is trash. We went through so much to infiltrate this rebel hideout. You wanted to join forces with the rebels to overthrow my kingdom. But unexpectedly, you ran into a fellow Blue Heart native here. How does this guy know that line?" I quickly tried to cover for myself. But then a big guy grabbed my shirt and said, "Did you just call us trash?" I explained, "That's what he meant." The man turned to Aina and asked, "So, you think we're trash?" "Because we only accept elites." Hearing the familiar lines, I accidentally chimed in with, "No garbage allowed." As soon as I said that, Aina looked at me in shock. But what confused me even more was, I couldn't see this woman's information panel at all. Aina spread her arms wide, and loudly declared that anyone who wants to join her must also accept the challenge. They murmured about unifying the world, leaving a name in history. Seeing their strange reactions, I felt incredibly puzzled. Was this really accomplished? It is to end the division and strife, to unify the world. If anyone wishes to join the great cause of unification, consider joining us. In the next moment, a purple light flickered in the eyes of everyone present. Hearing his words, everyone present was filled with righteous indignation. "You spread falsehoods to deceive the masses. You are nothing but a witch." Aina chuckled. "I descend southward to seize the dragon Chi. But I just want to ask, since the Central Plains is so impressive, everyone's life must be happy and fulfilled, right? Then why are you all risking the death penalty to raise flags and rebel? Is rebellion just a hobby?" They were merely a pack of northern savages. Hearing those rebels insult her, the woman sneered and said, "Are you referring to us as savages? It's true that compared to the prosperity of the Central Plains, we do fall a bit short." Then the woman in white explained with a smile that they were all taken care of by my family's Aya. Aina disdainfully played with the flute in her hand. "Nanjing is nothing but a weakling." In the next moment, the rebel leader beside her laughed disdainfully, saying he had heard something about a ridiculous holy artifact from Bei Mang. But in our eyes, leading the Breakwave Battalion, undefeated in battle, she represented women in the attempt to seize the dragon artifact, but she was wiped out by our friends from the grasslands. Upon hearing the words grasslands, I immediately perked up my ears. However, the Taoist ancestor wants to destroy the Qing kingdom, but doesn't want to become an emperor. As subordinates, we naturally have to find a candidate who can unify the world for the Taoist ancestor. But this so-called female hero of the Qing dynasty claimed to be the strongest general in Jiangnan. Wu Dongxuan's eyes revealed a killing intent. "I know you are dissatisfied with me. You have been spying on my position, but stirring trouble at this critical moment. Isn't it a bit too hasty?" Chen Siming innocently yawned. My loyalty to the Taoist ancestor is as clear as day. But Chen Siming not only shows no remorse, he even started to grin. Then he acted as if it had nothing to do with him. Who told this guy to be so weak? As he spoke, he directly stepped on his head. This scene made everyone present gasp in shock. Because the owner of this head is none other than the envoy of the heroic women. Wu Dongxian was shaking with anger. "I sent you to meet the special envoy from Nanjing for this event, and this is how you assist me? Yet he is 3 points more arrogant than me, the emperor of one move." He even threatened Wu Dongxian with a severed head, demanding he give up the position of the Dao ancestor. Seeing that none of us responded, Chen Siming directly threw the head over. "I wouldn't dare to disobey. I brought the person." Then he pulled out a still bleeding head. "A guy with red hair. Looks like a traitor." Seeing the newcomer, Wu Dongxian appeared extremely angry. "Didn't I tell you to pick up the people from Nanjing? Why did you come back alone?" To his surprise, the man arrogantly claimed that picking them up was the command of the Taoist ancestor. "Let's check the time. The people from Nanjing should be here by now." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from the entrance. At the front was a man with bright red hair. Behind him was a woman sitting on the back of a giant. Hearing that name, I was a bit surprised too. Nanjing is really preparing to compete for the container, but he suddenly burst out laughing. Did you never think that the descendants of the Chu family would truly be indifferent to the dragon vein when you impersonated them? I just love how relaxed you are. As expected of the man I chose. Even though there are so many backups here, I don't think any of them can compete with you. The only one who might be able to challenge you is probably the person from Nanjing. Of course, it's more fun to have a few more competitors. In the end, there is only one outcome. After all, it doesn't matter to me who brings down the previous dynasty. Little did he know my thoughts. You've charmed him straight into falling in love. And from that, select the one who would destroy the nation. No matter who the final winner is, they will be the victorious one. He then worriedly looked at me, wondering if your majesty could really handle a woman with such schemes and calculations. Then I laughed carefreely. I'm willing to bet on them. This time, with the dragon relic as an opportunity, I welcome everyone to compete freely. In an instant, Etienne understood his intent. He wanted to use the dragon vein to gather all the opposing forces. Hearing his words, I froze for a moment. So, does that mean I got play for free? Then I heard him continue, I don't want to be emperor, but for anyone brave enough to sit on the throne. You thought you made a deal with me last night, and that would secure Hong Xiujuan's full support to seize the vessel. But you didn't realize Hong Xiujuan is supporting more than just you. I told you, I'm a businessman. A businessman never puts all his eggs in one basket. Wu Dongxian suddenly appeared from behind me. He told him that everything I said was true. The moment they saw Wu Dongxian, everyone behind me clasped their fists and shouted, "Greetings, Dao Ancestor." Suddenly, he turned to look at me. Are you a bit disappointed? I am Li Tianyuan, former prime minister of the country. He is the former emperor's executioner, Xianjun. Hearing my answer, the man laughed even harder. Little brother, you really have a way of turning people down. Could he have anticipated that rebels would appear when the dragon vein emerged? So he plans to subdue them all in one go. A handsome, chiseled man was throwing flirtatious glances at me, a married man. I was so startled that I quickly pulled Li Tianyuan to my side. My unusual behavior was also noticed by Li Tianyuan. And he was even more shocked, truly worthy of being the emperor. Even in the enemy camp, his steps remained steady. He even had a hint of a smile on his face, but soon I suddenly realized, aren't the people I'm looking for precisely this group of rebels? Even though their gazes towards me are not friendly, I can't help but show an excited smile. These are all vital resources for the country. There are many other traitors and rebels like this, and quite a few of them have already been dealt with by us. Hearing his words, I felt uneasy. Does this count as a sheep entering a tiger's den? I pointed to the fierce bald guy over there. He's from Wufeng Mountain. And those who look like savages over there, they are members of the Sea Sand Gang. He told me. The ones with the blue triangle emblem are from the Shanhe Society. And those carrying the flag with the character Tian on it are from the Huang Tian Gang. As for those with the hypocritical smiles, they're from the Cruel Giant Wing League. Until I clearly saw the scene before me, I was utterly shocked. Is this really the true leader of the Red Sleeve Army? Suddenly, an inappropriate voice disrupted my thoughts. But many people here are definitely not from the Red Sleeve Army. I constantly felt very uneasy. It seems that something bad is about to happen. Finally, after walking for an unknown duration, Wu Dongxian finally stopped. He told me we had arrived. It would have been better to set off directly. It wasn't until we discussed for half a day that we finally confirmed the plan. We set off for the place where the true dragon emerges. But along the way, stop reminiscing. Let's head back to the main discussion first. We need to strategize how to seize the container. Hearing his words, I feel extremely puzzled. It's all worth it. But that guy Li Tianyuan actually carries the imperial seal with him. And he was so decisive in selling me out. It really is promising for the future. Wu Dongxian interrupted me with disdain. My tortured and emaciated appearance startled Xiao even more. Are you still alive? However, I had no strength to respond. At that moment, I couldn't help but lament the woman's madness. But for the sake of destroying a nation. As soon as he stepped out, Wu Dongxian noticed Xiao, who had kept watch all night. He noticed his gaze. Xiao responded fiercely to the other party. But then a pale hand suddenly grabbed the doorframe. After enduring an entire night of torment, the sound of a rooster's crow broke the silence inside. A few minutes later, the door suddenly opened. Wu Dongxian stepped out, looking full of energy. I had already been completely defiled by that female thug. The faint echoes of my screams reverberated in the room. The treacherous minister, in whom I had placed high hopes, suddenly awakened, and resolved to promote me as a wise ruler for all time. Moreover, he turned my #1 villain into my woman. Your Majesty, I have placed all my hopes on you. Become the true dragon. Don't let me down. You must be remembered throughout history. But as night fell, Xiao suddenly stopped him. Wu Dongxian, with a smile on his face, looked at him and said, Do you want to join us in the bridal chamber too? Xiao, who was about to say something, turned bright red in an instant. Inexperienced as he was, he angrily shouted, "Pervert!" After that, Li Tianyuan left this place with Asha. My head was buzzing. This crazy woman actually dared to ambush me. Before I could struggle, she knocked me out completely, just as he was carrying me, ready for the bridal chamber. You deserve to be my man, so there's no time to waste. Let's get straight to the point. I was startled by his fierce attack, but before I could recover from the shock, a large hand landed on my shoulder. Wu Dongxian looked at Li Tianyuan with satisfaction. Your proposal is very good. I am pleased with your sincerity. Then he turned to me and said, I admire the governance philosophy you mentioned before. Is this enough to prove my sincerity? Even Master Xiao, who was waiting to enjoy the show, was dumbfounded. This also left Wu Dongxian momentarily dazed. Could it be true what he said? Then I heard him say this will be my wedding gift to the future king and queen. Have you decided how you want to die? Li Tianyuan chuckled softly. Just empty talk? Looks like I underestimated it. As he spoke, he took out the Imperial Jade Seal. For example, Li Tianyuan is quite good. However, Wu Dongxian completely does not believe it. Having said so much, it's just empty talk. I have played enough. Wasn't Qian already mine? He ignored my surprise. Continuing to escape, I have long grown weary of the throne. Now my biggest wish, aside from getting rid of those two ungrateful sons, is to entrust the country to a reliable person. Li Tianyuan tricked Wu Dongxian into thinking he was the emperor of Qian. He even said that he could give up the throne and hand over the future of Qian to me. But after hearing that, I was totally confused. It was clearly an emperor's move. Yet I was caught in the bedroom by the rebel leader in a compromising situation. But the treacherous minister, who witnessed all this, didn't step in to stop it. Instead, he sincerely wished me success. It turns out that not long ago, little did Li Tianyuan know, he had already anticipated this. But what if it's not helping me, but helping him instead? I, who was originally foolishly smiling, suddenly stopped. You can't be thinking of granting me again, can you? He was met with Wu Dongxuan's opposition. Don't dream. Even if I'd love to see the two clans tear each other apart, there's no way I'll let the Hongxiu army help my enemies. You're being too unrealistic. Wu Dongxian spoke again. So you came here, not just to take the dragon vein. You still want my support, Hongxiu Juan? Li Tianyuan just nodded in confirmation. Not only will this preserve our lives, but it can also incite the Red Sleeve army to overthrow the state of Qian. Realizing this, I gave him an approving look. Truly, our little nation-destroying expert, the Tushur clan, must be completely wiped out. At this moment, I also understood Li Tianyuan's thoughts. Wu Dongxuan's hatred for the Qian nation isn't simply to eliminate him, but hopes for the Tushur to kill each other, leaving them childless. Li Tianyuan was startled by his terrifying demeanor, but I jumped out directly, shouting, that's right, we want the whole country to perish. You wouldn't even enjoy the thrill of revenge. Wu Dongxian, upon hearing this, just let out a cold snort. Killing you, Tu Qianjun, isn't enough. Of course, it's about wiping out the whole royal family of your murderous clan. I'm just a dethroned, useless man. But in the end, killing me isn't your best option. After all, the Qian kingdom still stands. Killing a former Qianuan so easily. Wu Dongxian, upon hearing this, also chose to trust Li Tianyuan. It's just that between me and Qian, there's irreconcilable hatred. You don't actually think you can walk away unscathed, do you? But Li Tianyuan just responded calmly, and looked at him with an extremely serious expression. I had no choice but to insult your majesty. I truly deserve to die 1,000 times over. Xiao, who was previously filled with murderous intent, froze on the spot, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. You've been playing the role of a treacherous minister all this time. Just now, you even went against your heart and insulted me. You've truly been wronged. Just as Xiao was ready and waiting for my command, he saw me suddenly clench my hands tightly. Just wait for my command. Then we'll go up and slay this guy who dared claim the throne and insult the royal family. Wu Dongxian spoke. So you ran to me like a beaten dog. Suddenly, Li Tianyuan's gaze locked onto me. Another ungrateful son, Tu Su, chose to help Tu Yi eliminate Zhao Zhua. This stabilized the court. At this moment, Xiao had already revealed his killing intent, because everything Li Tianyuan said undoubtedly stepped on his sore spot. Then he looked at me with great anticipation. Tianyuan stayed in the court, sowing discord between Tu Yi and Zhao Zhua, disrupting their ruler-minister relationship, create opportunities for my restoration. Unfortunately, our plan only succeeded halfway. Although Zhao Zhua and Tu Yi have turned against each other, when confronted with Tu Yi's attempts to win him over, he pretended to surrender, but secretly continued to plot for me. However, Tu Yi's power was already established. I had no choice but to fake my death and abdicate. But Li Tianyuan did not stop. That unfilial son has secretly colluded with the court officials to seize the throne. For many years, his influence has seeped into the court and the world. Even the left chancellor has become one of his people. Fortunately, Tianyuan remained loyal to me, feigning incompetence and debauchery, making me believe he was the most useless among all the princes. Hearing his words, I couldn't help but feel my veins rise. How dare you invoke the name of the late emperor? You are the one with a wolf's ambition. I wouldn't be risking my life to tell you this. I hate that unfilial son, too. It is he who has brought me to this miserable state. That unfilial son is treacherous and ambitious. He has always pretended. Unable to endure any longer, Wu Dongxian directly grabbed his neck. Do you really think I'm just a fool pretending to be a doctor? However, Li Tianyuan felt not a shred of fear. Everyone knows you hate the kingdom of Qian deeply. If I weren't at my wit's end, but he explained seriously that it was true. I'm not dead yet. The most cunning minister in prison pretended to cooperate with my act. He actually lied and said I was my already deceased father. But even a fool knows that Emperor Qianyuan was just buried not long ago. Who exactly are you? In my expectant gaze, Li Tianyuan calmly took off his bamboo hat. He coldly responded, Emperor Qianyuan. Standing next to Tu Qianjun, I was so stunned, I nearly spat out my drink. He burst into wild laughter. Now, the great wealth is in our control. At this moment, he also harbored ambitions to control the world. However, Wu Dongxuan's rebuke interrupted him. I'm asking you a question. They will be buried together with His Majesty. Yet his face remained calm throughout. Zhao Zhuo jogged over. He asked what to do next. But he directly ignored the late emperor's instruction. The late emperor was nothing more than a pawn. He turned to look at the imperial physician behind him. What use is an imperial physician who can't heal the emperor? It's just the day of the emperor's grand burial. It's unwise to see blood. More than leftovers for others in this world, but became the killer who holds the lives and deaths of all people. Until the moment the late emperor was killed and passed away, Li Tianyuan felt a bit of regret, because in his eyes, he finally understood what his father had said. What you said back then was merely a means to an end. One doesn't study for fame, nor for the sake of the people. It's just to leave behind. Meanwhile, greedy voices came from above the mountain. Why is there no food? But he could also. The sound of brutal chewing echoed from the mountain. At this moment, the boy couldn't help but scream. In the next moment, the group of refugees pounced forward. However, their outstretched hands were blocked by a figure. The boy looked at the man in front of him in surprise, but his father only smiled casually. Then he pushed him down the mountain. The man who had finished eating looked greedily at the boy. Do you have more to eat, right? Each refugee echoed this question. They surrounded the boy like hungry wolves. This scene left a significant shock on the boy. The man grabbed the food and devoured it greedily. Just as he was about to comfort the man not to rush. No one is fighting with you. Suddenly, a loud commotion was heard. He noticed that a large group of refugees had appeared around him. That Li Tianyuan finally understood. The so-called pride of scholars was nothing but a joke in the face of life and death. And what completely shattered his beliefs was a man on the verge of dying from hunger. Though he was kind-hearted, when he saw the man, he still handed over his only food. Not long after that, the sound of intense hoofbeats echoed outside the village. The warriors of the empire invaded here. Many villagers were forced to embark on the journey of leaving their homeland. It was from that day on. Will people sing your praises for generations? The lives of us scholars can be eternal. In his childhood, he heard this explanation. Though he instinctively felt disgust, it also gave him a purpose for studying. As a child, Li Tianyuan couldn't possibly understand the meaning of these 4 words. His father told him, a person's life is so short. In less than 100 years, we will decay and turn to dust, only by having your name recorded in history. However, I am not as noble as the sages. Regardless of establishing a heart or a destiny, whether carrying on teachings or opening peace, those are just means to an end. What I, your father, want is to be remembered in history, to establish a heart for heaven and earth, to establish a destiny for the living, to carry on the teachings of the sages, to open peace for all generations. This is the aspiration of us scholars taught by the sages. But back then, he couldn't answer the question. He only knew that ever since he could remember, he was always with books. Then he told his father that he didn't know the reason either. His father laughed. But when he grew up, he became a cancer to the entire kingdom. Power and wealth were merely toys in his hands. It turns out that when he was young, his father once asked him why he studied. Don't do something so foolish. The ages don't even match. With a hopeful look in my eyes, Li Tianyuan suddenly spoke. As a boy, he aspired to be a prime minister for the people and the nation. At this moment, Wu Dongxian had already begun his soul-searching inquiry. Who exactly are you? I was instantly drenched in sweat. I had just impersonated you. You're not thinking of impersonating me, are you? With such a powerful follower to protect you, you must be an incredibly important person too. Today really is lucky. I just happened to meet two big shots in a row. I looked at the discovered fool with a face full of despair. With a deafening roar, Asha was left charred all over. She completely lost consciousness. In the next moment, a jade hand rested on Li Tianyuan's shoulder. You have quite a capable subordinate. In the midst of dodging, Wu Dongxian remarked that Asha's strength was quite impressive. It's just a pity she ran into me. Then a violent thunderclap struck. Crackling lightning gathered at his fingertips. In the next moment, Asha was horrified to find that her spell was forcibly. A figure had appeared behind her without her noticing. Seems like eavesdropping is quite enjoyable. Asha immediately drew a card for capture. But her attack was deftly dodged by Wu Dongxian's agile movements. My sincerity made Wu Dongxian absolutely certain. What I just said is definitely from the heart. But as for cooperation, that can wait for now. After saying that, he locked his gaze on the two eavesdroppers nearby. I need to deal with the rats hiding over there first. I sincerely responded. What emperor? Not even a dog would want this. My goal aligns with Daozu. I just want to destroy the current Qian kingdom. So, are you trying to emulate Wei's penal code? But after that, you still want to use my power to seize the dragon's root, and make yourself emperor, right? In the face of his probing, I could only vaguely express that it might be because I take good care of myself. Then I immediately changed the subject. The key point is that if that foolish King Tu Yi doesn't fall from power, my principles for governing the country will never be realized. I had heard before that Li Tianyuan was knowledgeable and talented, unmatched in strategy. What you just said truly deserves this. But as far as I know, Li Tianyuan should be a middle-aged man, right? At this moment, I couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. I thought he had been eliminated by Tu Yi. I nodded in full cooperation. He really wanted to get rid of me. Fortunately, I escaped from Tianjin under the protection of loyal Deadpool. My expressive demeanor also made Wu Dongxian lower his guard quite a bit. I have no idea what got into that guy Tu Su. Wu Dongxian continued. After that, Zhao Zhuo was executed. Although Li Tianyuan was not dismissed, he also lost contact from then on. I did hear the news of his recent death, but I also heard that the powerful ministers Li Tianyuan and Zhao Zhuo supported some useless guy named Tu Yi to ascend the throne. They intend to control the government. Unfortunately, Tu Su came back and fully supported Tu Yi's ascension. When I heard this, I nodded even more frantically. Of course, I've always dreamed of overthrowing Tu Shitong, to establish a harmonious society. For this, I've been serving that old ghost, Tu Qianjun, like a horse. Finally, I worked him to death. Wu Dongxian nodded in agreement, but Li Tianyuan beside me was almost ready to curse. Who am I? That's Li Tianyuan. At that moment, Wu Dongxian looked at me with a face full of doubt. Are you really Li Tianyuan? I confidently told him. Then I saw myself seriously patting my chest and saying, I am the Crown Prince Li Tianyuan. As the emperor, I actually used the name of a treacherous minister. And this was just to better collaborate with the rebels, to turn my empire upside down together. However, his words were met with rejection from Li Tianyuan. You must trust His Majesty. Then he looked at me expectantly, wanting to know how I would handle this seemingly desperate situation. How do I persuade Wu Dongxian? I'm like Daozu after all. They want to annihilate the Qian kingdom. Li Tianyuan, who was eavesdropping, suddenly widened his eyes. Suddenly, Asha interrupted him, saying, Your Majesty is in danger. Should we take action? He grinned and said, You know what? I hate Qian people the most. I shouted at him, telling him to wait for me. Even though he is Qian, I only responded with a faint smile. So, you figured it out. Yes, I am indeed from the state of Qian. Wu Dongxian chuckled softly after hearing that, as expected. Then he gently picked me up. Have you forgotten? This is the territory of my Hongxiu army. If you don't explain your origins clearly, you will all die. But facing his threat, I was momentarily at a loss. Suddenly, Xiaolan appeared before me, warning about that group of ill-intentioned guys. Get away from here. But in response to Zhao's warning, Wu Dongxian chose to ignore it. To seek our welfare? At this moment, I finally realized, the proposed thinking policy is too ahead of its time, and has instead had a negative effect. Faced with an uncountable drought, he had no choice but to compromise with the Jiangnan aristocratic powers. He promised to share power with the women, but in the current situation, even the emperor dares not touch the aristocratic powers. Would the women really cut off their own arms? Seeing that I didn't answer, Wu Dongxian became more certain of his thoughts about you. You are not one of her people. In the past, when the king of Chu established his country, but without the blessing of the Huanglong Qi, do you really think I'm an idiot? You think you can deceive me with such lies? A woman like her cannot implement these policies. She would never make such a promise. Tell me, who exactly are you? Your description successfully moved me. I touched my head, and replied with great confidence, of course. However, he suddenly became extremely grim. After speaking for several hours, I finally finished conveying all my thoughts, and through my recent speech, I gained the respect of everyone. Wu Dongxian suddenly put on a smiling face. I have to admit, a strange feeling arose from the depths of his heart. He actually felt a sense of shame. Compared to himself and Zhao Zhua, who were still caught up in petty rivalries over interpretations with His Majesty. His Majesty's vision and realm had already embraced the world. He was about to establish a harmonious society. If it fails, there won't even be a chance to find a scapegoat. It could even plunge the entire court into an endless abyss. Suddenly, he turned his gaze toward my direction, but my confident demeanor left him in silence. Now, what I'm proposing is equality for all, under heaven. Even if we had another 100 laws, it wouldn't be enough to divide. What's more important is, this was actually proposed by Your Majesty personally. Managing absurdity, presenting the idea of equality to ancient people, completely shattered their long-held worldview. Back then, Wei Xing was torn apart by 5 horses, just for touching the interests of the powerful. That what is presented here is fundamentally an unachievable grand blueprint. Soon, a vision of equality for all wafted through. This time, even Asha couldn't help but feel a sense of longing. What a romantic idea! But Li Tianyuan lost all expression, and our conversation was successfully transmitted to their ears. It's just that because the distance is too far, the conversations they hear are only fragmented words. Even so, Li Tianyuan still discovers from these words. The other party is also a master of sorcery. If we're too close, we might be discovered, but I can try to move him further away. Then Asha threw the folded paper crane. The paper crane quickly and safely landed on a small tree next to me. Li Tianyuan, who was eavesdropping behind me, became extremely anxious, because he couldn't hear anything, so he turned to look at Asha. Can you let me hear what His Majesty is saying? But Asha looked somewhat worried. I clear my throat twice. Then I continue, let me introduce the governing philosophy proposed by the ruler. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop sneering inwardly. Watch me use modern thinking to give you country bumpkins a little shock. As I vividly elaborate on my cultural ideas, so we promised to implement reforms, to establish a perfect paradise on earth, as expected. At the same time I said this, Wu Daozu clearly seemed to understand. If you want to unify the world, you must eliminate Qian. So this doesn't really count as a promise. However, I don't care at all. Of course, so we have a second point. Our sovereign is determined to become a wise ruler for all time. This time, I came under the orders of our Lord to discuss cooperation with the Dao Master. Naturally, I brought 2 promises. The first is to destroy the state of Qian. In this regard, we should share the same stance with the Dao Master, but he ruthlessly disrupted my plan. Most of them were pitiable people driven to the brink by the chaos of war. Although he was no different from them, I knew it was all just his disguise. In his heart, he was actually a pure idealist. So I held up 2 fingers to him. He gained prestige through this. He was respectfully called the Patriarch by the refugees. In the end, he formed the Red Sleeve Army. Their goal was to overthrow De Qian. In my past life, I had seen too many leaders of such uprisings in history books. It became a refuge for the displaced. In his exile, he encountered his ancestors. He learned medicine and magical arts, and used his skills to heal those of similar origins. Because before coming here, I had already known everything about him. It turns out Wu Dongxian was originally from Fenghua, another village, was destroyed due to the chaos of the Foam uprising. But why should I help you? Or rather, what kind of price can you offer? I looked at him, but felt no emotion in my heart, continuously tempting me. This land, I am the greatest master of. As long as I am here to help, the world will be within reach. Clearly, you're the most noble emperor of Dakian. Yet you're thinking of joining rebels to bring down your own empire. But the woman mistakenly thought I was a messenger who sought the dragon's root. However, she did not reject me for this reason. Instead, she came before me. But he waved it off indifferently. I was born destined to be a rebel. I have no interest in that throne. But you women have been after it for 500 years. You've probably gone crazy wanting it by now. It actually unlocked a new nation-destroying mission. This made me incredibly excited. It seems my covert visit to the Hongqiu army was indeed the right move. So I excitedly looked toward Wu Daozu. Do you also want to seize the world? Their national strength was completely unable to compete with the Qin state. Now, the 500 years have passed. A new yellow dragon is about to be born. The world's order is about to change. At this moment, the system suddenly reacted. They each established their own states in the north and south, and participated in the chaotic struggle for power among the warlords. With the support of the yellow dragon's power, the Chang state unified the vast northern lands. Although the Chu clan also unified the lands south of Morong River, gained nothing else. These two, who could originally entrust their lives to each other, developed a rift because of this incident. Final break. After the two broke apart, the last time the yellow dragon appeared, it was Ancestor 2 who slaughtered the world. After slaying the dragon, he took the dragon's core. He gained invincible supernatural power. At that time, the yellow dragon was actually slain by Tu Tianxia and his sworn brother, the king of Chu. But the king of Chu, aside from gaining scars, every 500 years, a yellow dragon would appear here. Once it manifests, if its head is severed, and the dragon root is taken, one can obtain the yellow dragon's aura to rule the world. Looking at his casual demeanor, could it be that my identity has already been exposed? At this moment, he spoke again. The dragon root that controls the fate of the world is about to manifest. You women warriors came for this, didn't you? So there was a legend. Everyone knows this well. So why hide it? You came here for Emperor Qianlong, didn't you? I looked down in shock. How did you know about my secret? Seeking cooperation. Sounds nice. You've already introduced yourself, so why hide anything further? You also have thoughts about Emperor Qianlong. On His Majesty's orders, taking advantage of this nationwide turmoil, I came specifically to seek cooperation with the Red Sleeve Army. Suddenly, the wine glass shattered in front of me. Then, his furious voice rang in my ears. And your subordinate truly gives me a sharp, uneasy feeling. I applaud him. He really lives up to being a ruthless dog of the Red Sleeve Army. I didn't expect you to notice all this. To be honest, I am from the Jin dynasty. Instead, I asked her, isn't Hong Shoujuan known for welcoming everyone? Why shouldn't I be here? But with the way you look, I doubt you'll leave any legacy. Although dressed plainly to conceal your identity, this demeanor cannot be hidden. The fat woman swallowed a 20-meter-long centipede. After finishing, she still wanted more, so she set her sights on me. Do you want me to eat you too? I wasn't scared by her words. We arrived at an abandoned cave, and behind those guys who were crowding around, was exactly the person we were looking for. I saw that woman grab a black centipede, and unreservedly put it in her mouth, ready to strike at any moment. But I told him to put the blade down. My heart became incredibly excited. Take me to your boss. Not long after, at this moment, a bald man carrying a large blade walked over. You look unfamiliar. Are you from the south? Or perhaps spies sent by the court? Xiao had already drawn his long blade. I step in front to block them, and in front of us is a group of burly thugs. Seeing their arrogant demeanor, I also understood. They might be the Red Sleeve Army stationed here, as long as we maintain a perfect disguise. Looking at how they are relentlessly following us, I've completely given up. If they want to follow, then let them. Suddenly, there's a drop in morale. A warning not to follow in Zhao's footsteps. So, Tianjin is a perilous place for me. The best solution is to stay away. Follow secretly. Your Majesty, you don't need to understand the reasoning behind this. His Majesty is very cunning. He is keeping me in the position of Chancellor, to roast me over the fire. Besides, Tusu left the Golden Bell, as a way to intimidate me. Are you sure our disguise is effective? Asha confidently said it would be fine. Then she quietly asked him, why are we secretly following His Majesty out of the country? Li Tianyuan suddenly became extremely serious. Even Tu Su insists that Xiao follows me. He says he's worried about my safety. Hu Su is one thing, but why are those two guys also following along? Li Tianyuan suddenly said to Asha, Your Majesty seems to have discovered us. The Red Sleeve Army has even directly stationed here. Logically speaking, whether it's my old man, it's still my elder brother. This place should have been taken very seriously, but now the Red Sleeve Army has already occupied it. Since then, they gained the opportunity to contend for the world. This place was also named Longxing, but now, it nominally belongs to Dakian. In reality, it has long been infiltrated by various forces. However, there is one thing on this journey that puzzles me. This is clearly where Tushar made his name. But how did it end up like this? It turns out, 500 years ago, the ancestors of the Tusi family once beheaded a dragon in this area. Xiao whispered in my ear, reminding me, Wang, this area is close to the northern grasslands. Even His Highness Tusu finds this area quite troublesome. I impatiently indicated to him that I understood. You've mentioned it countless times along the way. Is to find the rebels, and join forces with them to dethrone me. After that, I arrived at the headquarters of the Red Sleeve Army, but as soon as I stepped in here, I was met with countless stares from the locals. It seems the Qin kingdom is not yet out of luck. What's the bad news? He is clearly a worthy emperor of the dynasty. Yet every day I think about how to destroy my empire, the best way I can think of. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forefront, a group of oddly dressed individuals has gathered here. There's good news and bad news. The new emperor has quelled the turmoil in the court within 3 months, but the Hongxiu army is the perfect choice. I'll use their hands to achieve my goal of destroying the nation. The emperor of Qianguo will become the pawn of the rebels. I like this script, and my unintentional smile scared Li Tianyuan out of his wits. In the south, there are women comparable to those of the former nation, and within the Great Front, there's the Hongxiu army, claiming to have millions of followers. This is precisely the most troublesome threat to Dakian. The first two are too far away. Li Tianyuan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly replied that he wouldn't dare. Little did he know that the purpose of my journey this time was to find an opportunity to trip me up. The northern grasslands are repeatedly invaded by the wolf tribe. Li Tianyuan was left speechless on the spot. Your Majesty, what do you want to do this time? So he spoke again, asking the emperor to think twice. I firmly interrupted him. Are you asking me to do something? To serve as a lesson. I was so scared that I directly interrupted him. I am not in the mood to hear this now. I have already decided to go incognito. You can wait until I return to talk about it. He is causing chaos among the people. I have been negligent in my duties. There are serious consequences. I am willing to accept punishment. I hope your Majesty will relieve me of my duties. I looked over as well. I heard the emperor display great power, personally dealing with the traitor Zhao Zhua. It truly brings great joy to the people. However, Zhao Zhua has stolen the military token from me, became the only disharmonious factor, and the target that Tusu wanted to eliminate. He looked at me, and suddenly had an idea in his heart, noticing Li Tianyuan's gaze. Suddenly, Tusu made a killing gesture at him. Li Tianyuan instantly broke into a cold sweat. Because I'm still alive, the delicate balance between the three parties has ended. Now, my stance towards the new emperor is wavering. I have clearly eliminated the major threat. So why can't I feel any happiness from him? Suddenly, he had a feeling. He looked back and saw that Tusu was watching him with an amused expression. Right now, the harem is completely devoted to me. Tusu is also determined to protect my throne. Even that scheming Li Tianyuan has settled down quite a bit. I no longer worry about my desire to destroy the country. Li Tianyuan has started to speculate about my thoughts again. No matter how reckless I was, I always managed to turn danger into safety. It built up my grand image, and that has given me immense pressure. How can I possibly bring down this damned country? He saw something on the military camp not far away. There was a figure he was incredibly familiar with. It was precisely his target this time, Zhao Zhua. Clearly, I only wanted to destroy the nation, but my empire has only grown stronger. Prepare the formation. At this moment, a soldier stepped forward. Look, what is that? General Wang looked in the direction he pointed, but what he saw made him widen his eyes in shock. What kind of person are you? Not long after, an army appeared on the mountain peak. The leading general shouted loudly, saying Zhao Zhua's troops were just ahead. A system notification rang in my ears. National power score increased by 5,000. Xiao watched my departing figure with a complex expression. One person alone subdued Lord Zhao, and even reclaimed military power. But now I realize I was wrong. How could I place my hopes on others? Then I looked up at Xiao. His fate will be handled by you all. I no longer know how to use him. He just fainted. What do you plan to do with him? But I didn't answer him. Instead, I looked down coldly. I had always placed my hopes on such people. Did he know I was hiding in the army all along? At this moment, his mind was wavering. It seemed this guy wasn't as useless as he appeared. Then he tossed Zhao Zhua aside. This guy's still alive. I noticed a figure had appeared behind Zhao Zhua without my noticing. I saw that person but felt no surprise. I simply called out his name softly. Xiao, you really did make your move. Xiao was greatly shocked upon hearing this. Just as I was letting my guard down, the unassuming Zhao Zhua suddenly revealed an incredibly sinister smile. In the next moment, he grabbed the dagger in his hand and lunged at me. A splash of blood instantly soared into the sky. But I maintained a calm expression, looking towards Zhao Zhua's back. He cried out in deep sorrow that he was a sinner of the former dynasty. Seeing his pained expression, even I couldn't help but feel moved. If this is how he seeks redemption, it seems there will be no need for future utility. I have failed the former dynasty. I have failed the people of the former dynasty. I have plunged them into deep suffering. This statement left the soldiers utterly shocked. Yet he did not stop there. I immediately swung a punch and shouted louder. I can't hear you. A tear streamed down Zhao Zhua's cheek. I have failed the emperor. I have failed the late emperor. Zhao Zhua never expected that this would be the answer he heard. I shouted at him again, telling him to say it out loud. Where exactly did you go wrong? Zhao Zhua seemed to reply to himself, saying, I let you down. Power, the army, or perhaps the throne. None of this matters to me. What I truly care about is the people I've trusted, yet they all let me down. I slapped his head with one hand. He exclaimed, I shouldn't have avoided battle, and I shouldn't have plotted to seize power. But these were not the answers I wanted to hear. I could only silently mutter to myself, wealth. Then he immediately knelt before me, constantly begging for my forgiveness. But I only gave him an emotionless glance. Was he really wrong? Zhao Zhua cried out, I shouldn't have led the troops on my own, and was walking toward him step by step, looking at my overwhelmingly intimidating aura, and the undisguised murderous intent in my eyes. he finally broke down, shouting, "It was my fault, my lord." Zhao Zhuo shouted furiously at them, asking why they weren't coming to protect him, but those soldiers merely glanced at him coldly. Then they all averted their gazes. This left Zhao Zhuo with no confidence left. At this point, I had already stepped out of the tent. Can I really be called useless? By now, Zhao Zhuo had already been completely defeated by me, and the look in his eyes had turned into absolute fear. At this moment, a sound nearby caught his attention. It turned out to be soldiers clad in armor. That's enough. I even went 3 days without sleep, just to organize a cosplay event. At the same time, I was seriously learning the language of this world. With all this effort, I coldly said to him, "What was it you said earlier? Tools that don't meet their master's expectations should be destroyed? Trash in the eyes of others. An emperor, but in reality, I'm a peerless warrior with an 8-pack. Just because I spend every day indulging in the harem doesn't mean I skip my workout." I grabbed his collar with one hand, and swung my fist at his head again. Then I kicked him right in the groin again. The excruciating pain made him cry out involuntarily. Watching Zhao writhe in agony, Zhao Zhuo was instantly knocked away. He covered his face and looked at me in disbelief. "Do you know how much I expected from you? But I still can't tolerate the stupid things you did." In his terrified gaze, it loses its value. And there's only one outcome. His words filled me with overwhelming anger. I turned around and glared fiercely at the man in front of me. I used all my strength to smash it into his face. "Those in the harem who spoil my plans in the court must die. But don't worry too much. Those women were just tools we chose to get close to you. Especially Uncle Zhao's second-hand goods. I've sent her to countless men. If a tool goes against the master's will." Yet he laughed even more smugly. "Shut up for now. It's not time for me to squeeze you yet. I'll send you to the new emperor. After that, I will personally deal with each of your people. After we leave the military camp, I'll hand you over to the new emperor. Not only can it save your life, but it will also be a great achievement." I coldly glanced at this brainless guy. "Zhao Zhuo, you truly deserve to die." Bright red blood brushed against my cheek, and that resolute figure has already fallen. His eyes were filled with tears of disappointment. At this moment, a long sword was already pressed against my neck. If Tuyi doesn't want to die, he should obey. Attack caught us off guard. Suddenly, a figure charged at him. The one who knocked him away was Yuan Hu. Zhao Zhuo glared viciously at the guy who interrupted him. Then he swung his sword towards Yuan Hu. "That's why you appeared here. You still owe the Qing military strategy. You speak as if it's true. Even if Hu Su should be punished, he's still an immortal. Punish you instead." Zhao Zhuo suddenly burst into mad laughter. "I almost got fooled by you. I see that at some point he has already grasped a sharp blade. You must be so kind to save me. It must be that the front line has collapsed. If I hadn't arrived in time, you would have really been doomed." Yet he still doesn't believe, and continues to mutter softly. It was impossible that the moment I cut General Yuan's rope, I continued to speak to him coldly. At this critical moment, the dragon comes to greet us, the hearts of the soldiers. "Lord Zhao, your ability to court disaster is truly unmatched. Do you know what they are shouting? Qing army, kill Zhao Zhuo." After hearing my words, Zhao Zhuo trembled uncontrollably. "I'm going to end up dead myself." Then I pointed his head toward outside the tent. "Lord Zhao, what do you see?" Zhao Zhuo was about to say something but saw nothing. I interrupted him directly with a congratulatory remark. 80,000, a full 80,000 troops from the Northern Army are coming for you." He just realized how excessive what he had done was. Suddenly, I grabbed his head. "Do you know, from just now until now, what you have done?" I grabbed his wrist tightly. I glared at him fiercely. "Zhao Zhuo, don't be reckless anymore." Zhao Zhuo trembled all over. He looked back in sheer terror. "Zhao Zhuo, don't be reckless." He forcefully swung the whip in his hand. Every whip reduces the soldier's fervor a little, yet he still isn't satisfied. He wants to behead soldiers with great achievements. Zhao Zhuo was startled, his whole body trembling from the immense force on his wrist. Their gazes all turned towards the back of Zhao Zhuo. That heavy breathing made Zhao Zhuo feel blind in the north. He saw my familiar yet terrifying face. I shouted at him in anger. Suddenly, Zhao Zhuo stopped. "Indeed, let's go for beheading." After saying that, he raised the long knife and slashed down at the ape tiger. Suddenly, a large hand blocked. He stopped the motion of swinging the knife, and offending a superior. "Conspiracy. Silently command him to die." After saying this, he looked fiercely at the silver fox. As he spoke of cruel tortures one by one, the man's voice sounded again, "Get out of here immediately." However, Zhao Zhuo interrupted him. "You're leaving just like that? Do I look like someone so easy to deal with? Trespassing in the inner camp." Yuan Hu trembled all over, but he couldn't find the words to refute. Zhao Zhuo walked in front of Yuan Hu. He took out the golden tiger tally. "Are you defying the imperial decree?" Then he shouted, "This is none of your business." Yuan Hu wanted to explain something. The man angrily said, "As a lord of Longshan County, Seeing the tiger talisman is like seeing your majesty. Do you really want to rebel? Suddenly, a soldier rushed in. Zhao Zhuo coldly looked at the man. Is this a place you can just enter? He then said to the man, your subordinate has intruded into a military-sensitive area. Are you planning to kill my boyan? The man suppressed the tearing sensation coming from his body. You have let down the trust of his majesty, but the punishment will be extermination of your entire clan. Then he suddenly struck the man's back fiercely. Half an hour later, Zhao Zhuo finally stopped. Zhao Zhuo looked at the man with great excitement. After being beaten for so long, he still didn't utter a word. He really is tough, but secretly, he has been in contact with Tusu. Damn you for betraying Dakian. Zhao Zhu's life is mine. Meanwhile, outside Zhao Zhu's camp, the faces of every soldier were filled with anger. The sound of the whip cracking continuously came from inside the convertible. Then he saw a shadow appear by the city gate. In the next moment, I rode past him on a fine steed. My target was none other than the traitorous Zhao Zhu. Zhao Zhu's life, no one is allowed to take, with treacherous intent. I have already ordered my subordinate Wang Zhan to lead 80,000 northern garrison troops to suppress Zhao Zhuo. By then, Zhao Zhuo's head will be presented as a gift for your majesty's coronation. But when he finished speaking, he found that my figure had long disappeared from the city tower. With a hearty laugh that echoed through the city tower, I could see a strong intent to kill flash in his eyes. Of course, Zhao Zhuo forged the imperial edict. He attempted to murder me, and stole the Dragon Territory's military seal. When I realized he was ignoring me, I suddenly recalled the slogans the soldiers had just shouted. So you really want to kill Zhao Zhuo? Hearing my doubts, Tusu couldn't help but burst out. Hearing his words, I couldn't speak a complete sentence for a while. I could only deny it in a panic. It's all fabricated. Don't wrong me. The throne, the underworld, and even this surname were shackles for him. But now, without these constraints, he has become very carefree. Now that you have fulfilled the promise you made back then, I am free from that bondage. From now on, I will be your most loyal subject. After all, we made this agreement 10 years ago. Originally, 10 years ago, Tu Su expressed to young Tu Yi that his dream was to become a general who fought on the battlefield. In comparison, becoming an emperor was like a fate worse than death for him. But I still stubbornly spoke to Tusu below the city wall. You call me June, which acknowledges my position. Tusu replied with great certainty. Of course, I came to the capital this time to congratulate your majesty on your ascension to the throne. Your majesty, I can no longer help you bring down this country. I'm going to die for a while. The heavy responsibility of annihilating the nation relies on you from now on. As that figure gradually walked away, I felt as if all my strength had been drained, collapsing to the ground. On the first day of becoming emperor, the prince at the border raised troops to rebel, but he is not rebelling against me at all. It is the treacherous official Zhao Zhu, who usurped military power and intends to rebel. For a moment, I seemed to see that annoying shadow. The deafening roar of the Qing army and their incredibly upright postures were so despair-inducing under the night's light. Congratulations, the system has successfully resolved Jin. The Southern Soldiers' Rebellion has turned into a siege weapon, causing danger. Rewarding national power points, 5,000. But you were right about one thing. I saw him instantly become incredibly serious. A commanding voice full of authority exploded in my ear. As the order of the biggie sounded, a group of soldiers shouted in unison, Zhu Zhazhua. What's with all this ceremonial speech before the battle? Tusuwa shook his head. Then he drew his sword from his waist. My emperor, oh my emperor, you're still as sharp-tongued as ever. A good soldier captures a city without shedding blood. Surrendering outright could prevent the conditions for close combat losses. If we don't fight to the bitter end today, there's no way to wrap this up. So I shouted, it's a shame you're called the god of war. You still complain about fighting. But soon I understood his intention. Being alone outside the city and shamelessly boasting, he was using verbal deception on me. He didn't want the northern army to suffer losses. So he approached me alone, spouting nonsense to trick me into surrendering. The battle flag that once danced in the wind has now grown still. After a full minute passed, I finally came to my senses. You're using these disgusting words to insult me. For a moment, I felt a great sense of denial. A war is about to begin. You just keep praising people. I know you wear these like clothes. To play the role of a foolish monarch. It's all to cover up the kindness in your bones. Just like before, indulging in pleasures. Stubborn and unyielding. Disregarding laws and etiquette. Hearing his words, I suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. My furious outburst instantly caught Tusu's attention. At that moment, I was fiercely grabbing the soldier's big face. You almost ruined my grand plan to destroy the nation. This scene also amused Tusu greatly. Tu Yi, have you now become the foolish emperor you wish to be? Isn't this my dear elder brother who raised an army in rebellion? At that moment, I caught sight of an idiot preparing to shoot an arrow. I swiftly dodged and appeared next to him. Give me a hand. Suddenly, I'll blow your brains out. I finally felt something was off. Weren't there supposed to be 100,000 troops from the northern defense? Why are there so few people here? Could it be that my brother needs to attack a loser like me in batches? Suddenly, a figure on horseback rode forward. He is the most pitiful emperor in history. He received news of a rebellion from the frontier princes less than a day after taking office. I knew this, yet I wasn't sad at all. Instead, I hoped those guys could succeed in their rebellion. Until I saw the enemy troops at the city gates. There are less than 1,000 soldiers left in the city who can still fight. My dear big brother, why don't you come and finish me off? But soon, I suddenly froze in place. Why didn't those guys choose to attack? Seeing the patrolling soldiers inside, I suddenly felt incredibly excited. It's secure, it's secure. This time it's truly secure. All the rich flavors were taken away by that old dog Zhao Zhua. Perhaps soon after, we will meet again. After that, military flags appeared outside the capital. Each flag represented a temporary camp. I believe His Majesty will make the right judgment. The soldier was very confused. Why didn't Xiao return personally to deliver the message? Xiao simply told him that he had more important tasks. After speaking, Xiao quickly vanished into the night sky. After hearing this, Xiao Ting fell into silence. With an incredibly calm demeanor, he replied, I understand. Then he whistled into the forest. An owl swiftly flew to his side. I will inform His Majesty of all the news. He scavenged around Xianjing. He annihilated the light concealment. He wanted to exhaust the Northern Expedition Army through passive avoidance of battle. So Commander Yuan secretly made these arrangements. He asked me to stay behind to assist the Northern Expedition Army. Xiao asked if it was that bastard Tu Yi who did it. The soldier hurriedly waved his hand, saying it wasn't. It was Zhao, the Lord. Now the tiger tally is in his hands. General Yan cannot disobey. Hearing this, Xiao finally softened a bit. So that time was indeed intentional on your part. The soldier looked guilt-ridden towards the distant flames. It's a pity that the supplies were all plundered from these villages. His gaze towards him became even colder. Noticing this, the soldier quickly explained. Nongxiang does not wish to be enemies with His Highness Tusu. The food left earlier was a gesture of goodwill, indicating he meant no harm. I am under the orders of the Dragon Guard commander, specifically waiting here for you. Hearing the soldier's words, Xiao remained on high alert. The bark beside him was also shattered by his grip. At that moment, there was a sudden rustling sound from the bushes nearby. Xiao immediately locked onto the soldier in the bushes. The soldier raised his hands. Xiao Zhang darted through the woods at an incredible speed. Soon, he stopped on top of a tree trunk, gazing solemnly at the village in the distance, engulfed by flames. Damn bastards. Must be another one of those foolish kings doing. Then he spoke, saying that Lord Zhao had the command token. We must not disobey his orders. As he spoke, he quietly told the soldiers his plan. Meanwhile, in the dense forest, but rather thinking of becoming king on his own, hearing his almost maniacal laughter, the soldiers ran to General Yuan's side. They asked what to do next. General Yuan was silent for a moment. He actually ordered them to poison the common people and seize their grain. After obtaining ample supplies, Zhao Zhua felt an immense sense of pride, because he never intended to battle Tusu at all, the most loyal general of Dakian. Yet before the great battle, he sends a messenger to offer the enemy general a surrender token. His despicable methods make the army that follows him feel an immense pride. It's simply because the one who holds the military power now is a person even worse than livestock. But, sir, the targets you've wiped out in Xingye are all our Dakian citizens. Precisely because they are Dakian citizens, they must be prepared to sacrifice for His Majesty. These cold words left General Yuan in disbelief. Is this really the Chancellor of Dakian? Zhao Zhua continued, I'm just making some plans to improve your odds of victory. As long as we avoid the rebels' direct assault, and then annihilate Xingye around the outskirts of Tianjing, cutting off their supply lines. Even if it drags on, it will wear down Tusu. Are you questioning my decision? You just mentioned morale. But even if your Longshan Guard's morale is at its peak, can they really defeat Tusu's Jinbei army? These words left General Yuan speechless for a while. Then he shouted loudly toward the carriage, do you know? The grain you're fighting for is the winter supply for our people? This tarnishes the Lord's reputation, and hurts the morale of the Longshan Guard soldiers. Zhao Zhua pulled open the carriage, General Yuan. At this moment, a man in armor walked up to the front of the carriage. He reported the completion of the military provisions collection to Zhao Zhua. Finally, he mustered the courage to say to Zhao Zhua that we clearly need to respond to the rebellious army. But why are we looting the grain here? At that, he paused for a moment. Yet no one dares to stand up and oppose. Inside the carriage, Zhao Zhua looked disdainfully at the scene outside. They can't even handle such a small matter. If I hadn't ordered the village to be set on fire, who knows how long it would take to gather the military provisions. Zhao Zhua suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. Since you've pushed me this far, don't blame me. After that, Zhao Zhuo led the Longshan guards to pillage all the villages around the former capital. No matter how much the people begged for mercy, Zhao Zhuo took out the tiger tally from his mouth. He was right. This is the last card I can play. Or rather, I have nothing left. Looking at the talisman in his hand, with this identity, and with the tiger tally, you can summon Long Xiangwei. So this is the last chance I'm giving you for the sake of our past. After saying this, Li Tianyuan strode away. Until Li Tianyuan was far away. But it is the only trump card you can hold onto, Lord Zhao. You just said I play dirty. Actually, that's not true. This is a straightforward and honorable strategy. You are still the left chancellor. What? Are you threatening me? Li Tianyuan did not answer. Instead, he walked towards the tiger talisman that he had knocked away. I'm merely stating a fact. This tiger talisman may be hot to the touch. Li Tianyuan continued, the jade seal you control has shattered. You have lost your authority in front of the officials. Even Uncle Zhao has betrayed you. You have no more trump cards left in your hand. Zhao Zhuo incredulously retorted. After saying that, he slapped the tiger tally away. The repeated provocations darkened Li Tianyuan's expression. Lord Zhao, is it because I was being too mild earlier? It has caused you to have some misunderstandings about your current situation. Li Tianyuan's terrifying appearance also shocked Zhao Zhuo. You borrowed this tiger tally. So now you have to take Commander Long Xiang to face Tusu's Jinbei army head-on, right? That madman Tusu fights like he has no regard for his life. I can't beat him. If you want to die, you can go die yourself. But faced with the temptation of the tiger tally, Zhao Zhuo stood still, unmoved. Then, he turned his fierce gaze to Li Tianyuan. Even you are playing tricks on me? I've received the news. This has made Li Tianyuan, who holds military power, very afraid. He even thinks that my recent commendation in order for him to lead the troops against Tusu, it was to give him a reason to die. This made him feel very uneasy. He was eager to pass this hot potato on. Responsible for guarding the Qinjin fortress. That's why, even after the late emperor's passing, we could still maintain peace for the most part. But now, due to my mishandling, Zhao Zhuo's status has plummeted. Zhao Zhuo, as the left chancellor, was given the imperial seal, and was responsible for conveying imperial decrees. He coordinated the 100 officials, while Tianyuan held the tiger tally. Command the elite forces of the dragon fragrance. I am now entrusting this item to Lord Zhao for safekeeping. Please don't decline. Back when the late emperor was still alive, out of consideration for balancing the power of the chancellor, he entrusted 2 of the nation's most important items to 2 individuals. The tiger tally is truly something precious. Yet, it was easily handed over to Zhao Zhuo by Li Tianyuan. To prevent Zhao Zhuo from suspecting, Li Tianyuan reiterated once again, this is what can summon the Longshan army. He cautiously asked Li Tianyuan what he intended to do. Then, to Zhao Zhuo's astonishment, he saw Li Tianyuan take out a golden tiger tally from his sleeve. It's an ordinary piece of gold, yet it can command 1,000,000 lions. Don't you want to know their identities? Li Tianyuan, who was about to lose his temper, calmed down. It seems that some of my previous actions caused a misunderstanding. I think I need to clear up the misunderstanding. This also made Zhao Zhuo realize something was wrong. He revealed that Li Tianyuan had planted an undercover agent. One was titled Bo Shi. The other controlled the Bo library. Do you really think I'm a fool? Besides, I also know that those 2 women are descendants of the traitors you adopted back then. After hearing this, Li Tianyuan only felt that Zhao Zhuo was just an idiot. This obvious scheme of discord. Do you really not understand? Zhao Zhuo became even angrier. What are you going crazy for? When did I discuss dealing with you with him? Then explain this. Why did I just lose face in the court that day? And he immediately made you a lady? Suddenly, an incredibly angry shout came from behind. I saw Zhao Zhuo running up to him with a fierce expression. No wonder he pretended to be ill and didn't attend court that day. It turns out he had already conspired with Tu Yi to deal with Bai Tianyuan. He opened his hand forcefully. That this was all part of the scheme I set for Li Tianyuan. It seems that Lord Li is in for some bad luck this time. After leaving my palace, Bai Tianyuan kept thinking about the figure in my painting. What does your majesty want to do? They'll also anger Tusu by launching an attack. As a result, the Jingnan ice and fire incident will be easily accomplished. Seeing my sinister smile, Uncle Zhao became even more certain. Although that old silver coin, Li Tianyuan, is very treacherous. Commanding troops is not his strong suit. Let him lead the Longshan army. By then, they'll definitely be in disarray. Their combat power will be greatly reduced. Smiling, I told him, of course I care. But what I want is not to win. If they really stay in the capital, it's hard to say whether the Jinbei army can break through. The consequences will surely be unimaginable. In such a critical moment, how can your majesty be at ease letting Lord Li lead the troops out of the city? You even say it doesn't matter who wins or loses. I narrowed my eyes. Did you deal with that old silver coin? Uncle Zhao happily told me. The mission has been successfully completed. However, I don't quite understand. Once the northern town army approaches, after everything was explained, Uncle Zhao calmly closed the door. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Putting on an act in front of that old guy is truly exhausting. I looked at Uncle Zhao with anticipation. We'll still lose with honor. These words left Li Tianyuan deeply shocked. Just go to battle. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. What is His Majesty's purpose with this action? So Your Majesty said, you don't need to go to the front. Just strategize from the rear. Just showcase the grandeur of General Long. Even if we're defeated. So he immediately put on a worried expression. Tu Su is known as the god of war. The Northern Border Army is the top elite of the front line. The Imperial Edict interrupted him directly. Does Your Majesty not know how formidable the Northern Border Army is? And you are still the lady. You should relieve Your Majesty's worries. After hearing this, Li Tianyuan fell silent. Your Majesty, are you going to make me take the blame? I must inform Your Majesty. Zhao Shu smiled slightly. This matter is already known to Your Majesty. However, he believes that Lord Li will definitely handle it well. After all, military power is in your hands. At the same time, outside my palace, Uncle Zhao expressionlessly rejected Li Tianyuan's request to see me. But Li Tianyuan had no intention of giving up. He said very seriously to Uncle Zhao that the Northern Town Army is only 800 miles from the capital now. I was unmoved. I even felt immensely proud of my foolish brother. It turns out that when Tu Su received the imperial decree abolishing his status as my disciple, he immediately ordered his troops to march into the capital. The soldiers behind him let out a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. And I will abolish your exile, so you can live the life you truly want. Just 3.5 minutes after ascending the throne, the crown prince in the distant frontier rebelled. But when I heard the news, as the former crown prince, I never had a choice. Tu Yi looked speechlessly at the brother in front of him, and then made an incredibly bold decision. One day, I will take your throne. I can't indulge in pleasure. It's not worth being the emperor. But Tusa shook his head, indicating no. Because his surname is Tu. As the eldest son of the Tu family, how come you live more exhaustingly than me, a useless prince? So I really envy you. Father has high expectations for me. He wants me to be a legendary ruler. That's why he interrupted my enjoyment of life. Tu Su still hadn't completed today's tasks. Suddenly, a stone hit him on the head. He turned to look at the boy by the window. I really don't understand. You are clearly the crown prince. My son's head is quite useful. Just yesterday, he defeated several Longxiang troops with his head. An angry Tu Qianjun directly punished him by forbidding him to eat. He also made him copy today's homework 100 times. This went on from early morning until evening. Though far away, they must be punished. Tu Qianjun struck him on the head, as the crown prince. His brain was completely useless. How can I feel at ease handing over the big money? To you? But Tu Su became even more confident. Don't I understand my brother's thoughts? It turns out it was on a certain day 10 years ago. The former emperor asked what comes next after friends come from afar. But Tu Su thought left and right. With great confidence, he answered, friends come from afar. Tu Su praised. He analyzed it well. Xiao Zhen also stepped forward, stating that Tu Yi is insidious and despicable. This must be his scheme. After hearing this, Tu Su laughed. Of course, I know he did it on purpose. Although their combat strength cannot compare to the Northern Defense Army, they can still be considered elite. However, they had just not engaged with our army, yet abandoned their supplies and fled. It's obvious he deliberately lost to us. Our victory was rather strange. Wei Jiang suspects there is a trick. Tu Su questions him about the oddity. Long Shangwei's duty is to guard the advance. The daily command is in Li Tianyuan's hands. He then rode his steed to stand before His Majesty. Our army has been marching south for over 10 days. Previously, we encountered no Qin army along the way. The advance has been quite smooth. However, just now in the battle with Long Shangwei, half a month later, I suddenly received an urgent report that the Northern Army was defeated at Shenzhen. Longxiang commandant seized countless supplies. After seizing a large amount of military supplies, General Wang shouted excitedly to the troops behind him that they need not worry about food supplies anymore. Crown Prince Tusu has already decided to rebel. And as a result, my nation's power points decreased by 2,000. I immediately broke into an insanely wild smile. Now the court's reputation has been completely wiped out. This is so like me. Before he understands the meaning of my actions, I have already stamped the jade seal. It was at that moment that the system rang again. It turns out this was because of my previous actions. Wasn't this a self-destructive act of handing over all imperial power? And it happened right after Zhao Zhua's recent failure. Could it be that your majesty wants to take action against Zhao, Zhua and Li Tianyuan? Is that why you issued this decree to divide them? I asked him to issue another decree for me. I want to appoint Li Tianyuan as Grand Chancellor. The first thing I did after becoming emperor was to promote the traitor I hated most to crown prince. This move left Uncle Zhao utterly shocked, because in his eyes, next time, I will definitely keep up with his pace. And I was unaware of what he was thinking. Instead, I was contemplating new ideas for destroying a nation. I hope Li Tianyuan won't disappoint me again. So I shouted the imperial edict again. It would have been better if they grasped my intentions more accurately. Uncle Zhao's heart sank. Indeed, I hadn't actively grasped His Majesty's intentions before. I still need His Majesty to remind me before I step forward, only to let him down. So he silently vowed to himself. So why was I still looking displeased? Carefully, he said to me, "Sure. Are you satisfied with your performance at court?" I was stunned for a moment when I heard his voice. Then I forced a gentle smile and said, "It's all right." I received a notification that I had successfully thwarted Zhao Zhua's scheme. Not only was my imperial authority reinforced, but the national points also increased by another 2,000. Uncle Zhao couldn't help but feel a chill down his back when he saw me like that. Clearly, I had already intimidated the courtiers. I will pretend as if nothing ever happened. May I ask what Lord Zhao thinks? Zhao Zhua looked at me with a face full of terror. He trembled as he said, "Your Majesty is right. After returning to the imperial study, it's not worth it for a monster like this to harm my lord and his ministers. It truly isn't worth it, regardless of whether it is auspicious or not. I will strike it down with one sword." As for today's court meeting, a treasured blade. But the moment the long sword fell, what was beheaded was not his head. It was his so-called auspicious azure dragon. I walked past him and reminded him. Suddenly, he widened his eyes in terror, because he felt an incredibly terrifying pressure coming from me, and the act of me drawing my sword sent chills down his spine. Suddenly, I took a step forward, right in front of him. At that moment, Zhao Zhua seemed to see a true dragon drawing its sword. As they listed all the evidence of wrongdoing, the ministers who had been waiting to see me make a fool of myself fell silent. At that moment, Zhao Zhua also realized something. Li Tianyuan was right. This kid really isn't someone to mess with. Lord Xia was so enraged by his words that his anger overwhelmed him. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The ministers beside him quickly shouted for Lord Xia, the imperial physician, to come. He was on the verge of death. But the concubines on the stage exchanged knowing smiles. One by one, they revealed all the disgraceful acts of their father, the head of the He family. Is this world the emperor's or Zhao's? Back then, you didn't have faith in the newly enthroned emperor. You even sent me into the palace as cannon fodder. At that moment, our bond was already broken. So he rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward. "Be audacious, this is how I usually teach you. How dare you be rude to Lord Zhao?" But the woman on stage was even louder than him. "You're the one being insolent." Hearing those words of exterminating the 9 clans, Zhao Zhua's heart instantly grew cold. He looked back at Lord Xia for help, hoping he could assist him. Lord Xia felt this was an opportunity to show himself, so he waved his arm dramatically. He called out to my concubines, "Sisters, am I right?" Then I saw my concubines all looking indignant. They condemned Zhao Zhua's crimes, but the words "how dare you betray me" were stuck in his throat. At that moment, I was also filled with deep sorrow. "I can't believe you didn't betray me. But I look like I've eaten shit. Yet Uncle Zhao thinks I'm not satisfied enough." While Zhao Zhua was still in a daze, Uncle Zhao suddenly shouted angrily, "Lord Zhao, are you trying to fool the emperor? This is a crime of treason." Zhao Zhua's face instantly twisted in fury. Then he abruptly stood up, gazing coldly at Zhao Zhua in the audience. But Zhao Zhua just smiled confidently, listening to what Uncle Zhao was about to say. However, Uncle Zhao firmly insisted that such an ugly creature couldn't possibly be the sacred beast, the Azure Dragon. "Yet you have kept me by your side all along. And now he still wants me to take a stand here? Does he want me to choose between him and my adoptive father?" Sweet memories flashed through his mind. Uncle Zhao suddenly understood his choice. Can my plan to destroy the nation be perfectly executed? I let out a cold laugh and looked at Uncle Zhao. "Don't you want to say something?" But Uncle Zhao was frozen in place, looking confused. "Your Majesty knows that I am the adopted son of that man. Is what's below really an omen of good fortune?" But Sanglong girl was originally an undercover agent planted beside me by Zhao Zhua. But as the emperor, I had no choice but to reject the method. Instead, I revealed all my first-hand intelligence to him, because only in this way. So I placed my hopes on Uncle Zhao. "My love, don't you want to say something?" Uncle Zhao looked at me in shock and pointed at himself. I looked at him very seriously. I nodded and said, "I want to hear you speak." "Who the hell dares to speak for me?" I found out that the one who stabbed me was actually someone I brought along. A miscalculation in the harem. I didn't expect these guys to support me so much, but soon I thought of a way to remedy the situation. But just then, someone suddenly stepped forward to raise a question. "This thing looks so ugly. How could it possibly be an auspicious sign?" I looked angrily at the source of the voice, proud as he looked at me. "I'd like to see what you've got to say, kid." Little did he know, I was even happier than they were. At this rate, I'd be able to complete the kingdom's mission, indicating that such records exist in the books. Then the ministers congratulated me, saying, "Your Majesty is blessed. It truly is a good omen." The Azure Dragon. Hearing their voices, Zhao was extremely. Is he really an Azure Dragon? Upon hearing this, a minister immediately stood up. He confidently asserted that this is the Azure Dragon. Even more so, some directly presented ancient texts. Zhao couldn't help but sneer. He then put on a look of great distress. It seems His Majesty does not recognize the Azure Dragon I brought. You ministers, what do you say? The ministers also started discussing among themselves, waiting to see my downfall. But I just scratched my head and smiled at Zhao, saying, "Look at this thing. It's definitely not an auspicious Azure Dragon." Upon hearing my words, I knew you wouldn't let me down. Is it finally my time to perform again? Suddenly, the roar of the giant lizard interrupted my thoughts. It screeched wildly at me. The guards immediately tightened their grip, calling a deer a horse. In the original story, Zhao Gao used this trick to seize imperial power. Now, I've run into a similar guy. Zhao, oh Zhao. Your Majesty, look how mighty this spirit beast Sanglong is. Meanwhile, in his heart, he was full of cold laughter. Kid, I want to see how you'll handle this. At this moment, the system alert sounded again. I've discovered a new nation-destroying event. I, on the other hand, spit out a mouthful of water. The Divine Clan's spirit beast, Sanglong. Isn't this thing just an oversized lizard? But Zhao thought I was too shocked to speak. So, with great pride, he pointed at the giant lizard. It is an auspicious spirit beast representing the flourishing luck of the dynasty. Just as I was curious about what he would bring, I saw two guards bringing a giant lizard into the hall. Upon seeing the true appearance of this so-called spirit beast, the hall fell into a long silence. Clearly, he only wanted to be a foolish ruler. But my ministers think I have ambitions to unify the world. In order to suppress me, they are shaping my image among the court. Zhao said he would present me with a gift. Could he already know about my impending inaccuracy? In the end, he still decided to proceed with the earlier plan. He cheerfully said, "Your Majesty, let's first see how this auspicious spirit beast performs." Then he clapped his hands behind him. So I wanted to take the opportunity today to present the auspicious omen to His Majesty. But after hearing this, I became incredibly disappointed. I didn't want some bullshit great surname. Zhao also noticed my disappointed expression. His heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Hearing this, I felt a bit excited. I asked him what the auspicious omen was. I saw a hint of a cold smile on Zhao's lips. In an exaggerated manner, he introduced it as the spirit beast, the Azure Dragon. I thought to myself that this symbolizes the great surname of our general. The show is about to begin. Then Zhao stepped forward. I have an important matter to report. Recently, an auspicious sign was discovered on the Far Eastern Islands. It was offered to me. I glanced down at those dissatisfied with me. This was my first time attending court. Do any of you have something to report? Upon hearing this, the ministers present couldn't help but chuckle. The ministers below were all feeling frustrated by my performance. This guy is just an incompetent tyrant. Zhao looked at me on the throne with a gloomy expression. You'll pay for this soon enough. After everyone took their seats, my actions directly triggered the system. I lost 500 vitality points. Suddenly, I broke into an incredibly excited smile. It seems that as long as I lose the Emperor's Majesty, I could lose points for this. Why aren't you going to show my beloved concubine? Quick, the eunuch brought over a bunch of cushions. They were placed next to my throne. I instructed my beloved consorts to sit beside me. Everyone just make do for now. I looked down at Zhao. As long as I am shameless enough, with no bottom line, then no one can touch me. Then I turned to the eunuch beside me. What I say is a decree. What I do is divine will. Who do you think you are? How dare you judge me? My arrogance leaves Zhao speechless. To humiliate us like this. Zhao directly criticized Your Majesty for bringing the harem to court, which is against propriety. I wonder what Your Majesty intends by doing this, but his words do not make me feel the slightest bit ashamed. I am the Emperor. Zhao was also instantly dumbfounded. What exactly is this kid trying to do? Suddenly, a voice from a minister interrupted everyone, because he realized that the legitimate daughter he had sent to the harem not long ago was among them. Could it be that His Majesty deliberately brought them to the hall? Seeing this, I laughed and applauded in delight. Even arrogantly addressing them, I just want my beloved consorts to experience what it's like to attend court. The esteemed ministers shouldn't have any objections, right? Still wanting to see me make a fool of myself. The first thing I did after becoming emperor was to bring all 356 of my concubines to court. The ministers in the hall couldn't handle the shock. One after another, they prayed for the late emperor's soul. But my concubines didn't care about any of that. They curiously wandered around the court. Yet I smiled and glanced over the officials. If I dismiss one of you, you can't handle it. The courtiers looked up at me in confusion. Then they witnessed a scene they would never forget. I actually brought all 365 concubines with me. Soon, a figure appeared in their line of sight. However, I was not the only one who came. Uncle Zhao followed closely in my footsteps. This led to much discussion among the courtiers. When has an emperor ever brought a concubine to court? As he spoke, his gaze became fierce. Once I deal with that brat Tuya, I'll come back and settle the score with him. At this moment, the voice of the eunuch rang out, His Majesty has arrived. Zhao Zhuo glanced outside the hall, somewhat displeased. So he didn't come. Zhao Zhuo knew he just didn't want to come, although he felt angry. But in the end, he waved it off, saying that since Lord Li was not feeling well, it didn't matter to him. Zhao Zhuan enjoyed their indulgences like an emperor, but soon he noticed something unusual. It was simply that Li Tianyuan's seat was empty. Another minister approached him from behind. He reminded him that Lord Li was unwell. Uncle Zhao informed the Lord of Zhao overnight. The next day, at mid-morning, all the ministers were already gathered. As footsteps echoed inside the hall, the ministers respectfully greeted the attendant, saying, Good day, Master Zhao. That you can tell Zhao Zhuo about all my situations? This time, please pass on a message to him as well. Tell him I will soon attend court to listen to state affairs. Tell him to be prepared. After hearing this, I've neglected you. I apologize, Uncle Zhao, for being scared and kneeling before me. Quickly answer, I dare not. I reassured him not to be nervous. Haven't I mentioned before? I almost forgot about that guy Zhao Zhuo. Wasn't Zhao Zhuo constantly urging me to attend court before? This point can be utilized. So I called out Uncle Zhao's name. I have been paying more attention to Aizhu and Aisha lately. I quickly began to think again. Although this plan is likely to succeed, I still need to rely on the help of treacherous officials to prevent any unexpected incidents. So I set my sights on Uncle Zhao, that he would cut off my head. Uncle Zhao beside me was utterly shocked, because I had let the assassin who tried to kill me go, and even deliberately provoked Tu Su. Right after I sent the assassin away, I even generously stated that he could come and take my head anytime. It's just that I awakened the kingdom system. As long as I am killed, I can trigger the kingdom conditions. Looking at how arrogant I was, Xiao silently swore in his heart. Xiao became more certain that I must have some great name, but soon he became resolute again, thinking this is for the best. Your Highness Tusa still has the chance to reclaim the throne. The assassin clearly wanted to kill me, but I let him go unharmed. I suddenly burst out laughing, as expected from a second-level nation-destroying event. As long as this mission is completed, my national power points will definitely drop into the negatives. Looking at how I couldn't help but laugh hysterically. 2,000 national power points will be deducted from the host. If the prince leads his troops to attack the capital, this marks the completion of the second phase of the event. 5,000 national power points deducted from the host. Hearing this, two conditions are required to trigger the Jingnan rebellion. There must be a royal prince in the north holding significant military power, and the host must be the emperor. The emperor then issues an edict to revoke the prince's power. If the prince revolts as a result, the first phase of the event is complete. The system told me. The Ming Emperor Jiangwen, Zhu Yunwen, had ordered the reduction of feudal lords, Zhu Di. This sparked Zhu Di's rebellion. In the end, King Yan successfully rebelled in the capital, historically known as the Jingnan Rebellion. Definitely Oscar-worthy. But soon the system's prompt sounded again. It unexpectedly triggered a second-tier national destruction event, the Jingnan Rebellion. I puzzled over the system's words in my mind. What's the difference between this and an ordinary national destruction event? He might as well try to rebel and take back what's originally his. I'll be moving forward, waiting for him, while secretly feeling proud in my heart. My acting. Today, not only will I strip him of his titles as King of the Northern Territory and Commander of the Northern Army, but also take away his punishment. I'll degrade him to a commoner. You tell him, if he's not satisfied with my decision. Father said Tu Su was born a war god officer. He was made emperor to train him. He was titled King of the Northern Territory and Commander of the Northern Army. But I see him as nothing more than brute strength. He's not worth fearing at all. Then he realized that I had actually severed his chains. Are you wondering why I didn't kill you? Let me tell you, killing my surname, then it will be up to you to write a new decree for Tusu. I decided to choose a more interesting way to play with him slowly. Amidst the vanishing terror on his face, I swung down directly with a blade. With a loud clang, the expected chill didn't appear on me. He must have been holding those heavy weapons left to me by my father. Just as Uncle Zhao was pondering why I was shouldering this blackpot, I glanced coldly at the laughter beside me. Looking back now, it's too boring to kill him with an imperial decree. I covered my head with one hand and burst out laughing. I remembered now. This was indeed my decree. Uncle Zhao behind me looked at my back in surprise. Then I turned around and reached for the closed-off scene beside me. It must have been that fool Zhao Zhuo who forged the imperial edict, but I might as well go with it. I'll take the blame for this, and stir up some hatred against Tusu. So I broke free from Zhao's grip. How can you rest easy on the throne without killing him? I understood everything after hearing the imperial decree by my side, because this was exactly something his adoptive father did secretly. I saw his subtle expression while reading the decree. In that instant, I understood everything. Sooner or later, you'll be wiped out by Prince Tusu too. His words left me very confused. When did I ever say I wanted to stab Tusu? But he told me not to make excuses. His Highness Tusu was the crown prince chosen by the late emperor. Just because he mistook me for a hawk who wouldn't even spare a killer's chastity. At that moment, he was pushing me aside with all his strength, and told me to hurry up and kill him. You issued an imperial decree for his death. I've already wiped out Prince Tusu's family name. Xiao was so frightened that he screamed, "Kill me if you want. Torture me as you wish, but don't come any closer." Clearly a powerless emperor. Yet he threw a top-notch assassin onto the bed. But the assassin, who was usually fearless, was crying and begging me for mercy. Although Chun Xiao's attempt at Ling's incident failed, the assassin still holds value. As long as we send her back to Tusu, the plan to annihilate the nation can continue. Seeing my malicious gaze, do you think I cannot deal with a woman who has lost her weapons and freedom of movement? Li Tianyuan quickly replied that I could not. So I said to Aiju, take good care of Asha. Then I called Zhao Shu over. Together, we dismissed the others. Li Tianyuan looked at me helplessly and said, Your Majesty, this assassin is very dangerous. I'm worried, he said, but I naturally replied. I just enjoy thrilling games. Or should I say? I graciously told him it was fine. But he suddenly wanted to take the assassin away for investigation. I immediately raised my hand to stop him. Then I came up with a half-baked reason. I think he looks quite good. I want to keep him for myself. You would have already died at Li Tianyuan's hands. It turns out that after Xiao fainted, Li Tianyuan had rushed into my palace with all the guards. Upon seeing that I was safe, he immediately knelt down to apologize to me. I was a bit puzzled too. Then I saw him, looking utterly wronged, saying to me, even if you have gotten my body. I quickly interrupted him. What good thing are you thinking about? If it weren't for me. Seeing the confusion in his eyes, I laughed and introduced to him that this was my bedchamber. Xiao glanced at the shackles on his hands, and angrily cursed me, calling me a despicable villain. Being insulted by him without any reason. Lordly, I slowly start to understand the expression you showed when talking about the Night Slayer. After an unknown amount of time, Assassin Xiao finally woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, I smiled and asked him, are you alright? At that moment, Azu behind me was startled. What a terrifying aura. Clearly, both masters have already fallen. Yet he seems completely unscathed. Now the assassin has been subdued by the host. National power points increased by 100. I roared angrily at the sky, unwilling to accept it. What kind of ridiculous rule is this? How can you get points for failing a mission? Aju looked at me in disbelief. Once the dust settled, I finally came to my senses from the shock. That's when I received the system alert that I had failed the mission. Then I was told that the Qin King ambush event was triggered. I accidentally kissed the assassin on the mouth. Zhao's expression changed drastically as he reacted. But before he could make a move, the back of his head slammed hard against the ground. His consciousness vanished in an instant. Are you freaking stupid? At that moment, Asha's attack came down. A blazing fire exploded right where he was. The fire instantly illuminated the entire royal city. But what's really dramatic is, if Xiao gets taken down, Shen Xiao will return. The situation would surely fail. So I shouted at him to get out of the way, and even lunged toward him myself. In the next moment, a blazing flame appeared in his hand. At that moment, he seemed like a god of fire descending to the earth. It seemed that with just one strike, he could eliminate the guy who tempted his man. Zhao's heart was alarmed. I was so scared that I nearly wet my pants. It seemed that only by doing so, could he feel a bit of security? Asha's hands rapidly formed several complex gestures. Then she took a deep breath, and summoned a burst of Samadhi true fire. She will launch a relentless killing spree, until that target is dead. That terrifying aura. Even Xiao, with his power maxed out, felt a trace of fear. Xiao Yanli gripped the dagger tightly in his hand. He saw Asha staring at him with murderous intent. Dare to steal my man? She's an expert in defensive techniques. This young lady is an absolutely Yandere ice-cold beauty. Because once someone touches her man, his Yandere trait had completely awakened. He wouldn't allow any woman to touch him or Aju. Because if any other woman touched him, he would fall into a berserk state. That extreme threat made Xiao feel the tension behind him. I breathed a sigh of relief. He caught me effortlessly with a backhand grip. Meanwhile, Aju in my arms was running straight toward the ground. Just as he was about to fall down, he surprisingly stopped in midair. But I was still anxiously shouting at him. What the hell are you still hesitating for? It'll be too late once the guards arrive. That also made Xiao feel a sense of urgency. Seeing him finally move, she completely collapsed. I immediately looked at Xiao. Hurry, take this opportunity to give me a sidelong glance. My inexplicable words left Xiao utterly confused. Is this guy's brain broken or something? The other hand lifted her chin. As the supreme ruler, how could I let my beloved consort protect me? Unsurprisingly, my superior skills directly disarmed him. Asha's body went limp. The host will be deducted 1,000 national power points. Hearing this, I revealed a chilling smile. How could I almost forget Asha's weakness? So I quietly approached Asha from behind and embraced her with one hand. A general with heavy troops is leading an army outside. The host is under threat, forcing Captain Xiang to the general. If the captain succeeds, this will be considered the completion of the event. To file a complaint, I must control Asha's actions. Only then can it be accomplished. Chen Xiao returns. Emergency situation. At this moment, the system sounds again. I stared intently at Aju behind me. Sure enough, I saw him looking away nervously. I almost forgot this guy is also Li Tianyuan's person. Li Tianyuan wants to use me as a puppet, so they will definitely stop me from rising to power. I realized it was useless. I suddenly burst into laughter. Even in the end, I stopped. I kept blocking. I suddenly looked back. The purpose is to make contact with the Kuan position, then unite with Tu Su to deal with Lord Li. Unfortunately, your scheme has long been anticipated by Lord Li, and I wasn't as calm as he imagined. Instead, I hurried forward to mediate. You must never let her stand in the same camp as Tu Su. Seeing the faint smile at the corner of my mouth, Aju became even more certain of Lord Li's speculation. The foolishness and incompetence of Master Tu is definitely just a disguise. This time he invited the harem to hold this strange costume party. As for Asha, she is proficient in the arts of divination. She has strong execution skills, but her thoughts are simple. There is just one thing. You must remember. Could he be afraid? Or perhaps extremely excited? Li Tianyuan suddenly called out Aju's name. You are always smart. You can adapt to the situation by staying by his side. So I need you to observe him closely in my stead, and find his flaws. Seeing Li Tianyuan's tense expression, Aju was both shocked and amused. It was the first time Lord Li had shown such an expression, but what you guessed was just my initial plan. However, after Tu Yi ascended the throne, his actions seemed to have changed completely. His previous marriage seemed like a facade, making it even harder for me to see through. You want us to be chaotic concubines by his side, to tempt him into becoming the ruler of a fallen nation. Li Tianyuan nodded in satisfaction. Aju, you are indeed quick-witted. A little insight. Li Tianyuan continued to explain that originally, among the royal princes, Tu Yi has shown himself to be the most incompetent. Previously, I took advantage of Tu Su leading the army outside to support him in ascending to the throne. It was to allow De Qian to change dynasties under his rule. Aju instantly realized. How can killing just one Tu Yi settle your blood feud? Your ultimate mission is to bring down the Qin dynasty. So, for now, you must ensure Tu Yi stays alive. Upon hearing this, the two were stunned. It turned out that the night before they were sent, Li Tianyuan had asked them if they knew what the mission after approaching Tu Yi was. Asha immediately replied that it was definitely to find an opportunity to take down Tu Yi seeks revenge for our family. Li Tianyuan shook his head in disappointment. With him protecting your majesty, the assassins have no chance at all. After saying this, Azudin felt that his decision was correct, because he saw a determined expression on my face. I feel equally intense about the current situation. Suddenly, Aju placed her hand on my shoulder. Your Majesty, don't worry. Asha's magical abilities are powerful. Her combat strength is probably on par with that assassin's. He can sense that the woman in front of him is also a strong person. As expected, his earlier words as a lieutenant. It's to prolong my lie. This foolish ruler really excels at playing with people's hearts. But in reality, he spends all day ignoring state affairs and seeking pleasure everywhere. Yet despite this, there are still beautiful young ladies willing to stand up and protect me when I grant them favors. This also makes Xiao feel extremely challenged. Suddenly, a voice interrupted my thoughts. I saw Asha standing in front of me, attempting to take His Highness hostage. Have you asked the prisoner in my hands? Clearly, as the king of a nation. Then please take a trip to Lintong City in Beijing. Complete the captain's handover ceremony in front of His Highness Tu Su. Hearing this, I finally smiled. Once the captain's ceremony is complete, this nation will be destroyed. He is the legal heir according to the great precedent. How could I be shaken by a few words from Tu Yi? Thus, he erupted again with terrifying murderous intent. He walked towards me step by step. Since you don't want this throne. But now, in the midst of reckless chaos, tolerance and non-contention, the qualities in Tu Yi actually align well with the late emperor's description at the time. But soon he negated that answer again. Prince Tusu is the legitimate eldest son of the late emperor. even in the reckless chaos. As long as tolerance and non-contention prevail, without seeking quick success or benefits. I recall the late emperor's dying words. Shao once thought the successor he spoke of was His Majesty Tusu. The previous dynasty will always need an emperor like your majesty. The late emperor suddenly smiled. I know my days are numbered. However, this might not be an unfortunate thing for the next dynasty. I only hope that my successor, even if not as capable as I am, and your decisions in war are decisive, you can be regarded as a wise ruler throughout the ages. Unfortunately, my methods are only suited for chaos and conquest. Perhaps the next dynasty won't need an emperor like me. Xiao Dasheng disagrees. Xiao also fell into silence. He suddenly recalled what the late emperor had entrusted to him. I established the previous dynasty and pacified the northern turmoil. Do you think I can be considered a good emperor? Your majesty possesses both literary and military prowess. So I spoke again. Killing me now will only burden Tusu with the infamy of regicide. Even if he becomes emperor, it won't be legitimate. I'm doing all this for his own good. After hearing my answer, or if you're just trying to buy time, as long as I kill you, the outcome will be the same. His words made my scalp tingle. Why is this girl so fixated on taking me out? It really was heaven sent. Xiao looked at me with a wary face. Could it be that there really are people in this world who aren't infatuated with authority? This must be his trick. Suddenly, he said coldly, I don't care if you really think that. The event is considered complete. 1,000 national power points will be deducted from the host. Upon hearing this, I was stunned for a moment. I didn't expect my bold move would directly trigger a shutdown event. Due to Chen Xiao being in a zero-trigger condition, the General Chiyo, holding a large army, leads his troops outside. The second host is under threat, forcing a request to the general captain. If the captain succeeds, Emperor Taizu Zhao Kuainin was originally a general with significant power in the later Zhou dynasty. Later, during the Chen Xiao uprising, he forced the Zhou Gong Emperor Chai Zongshuan to abdicate. This is historically referred to as the Chen Xiao uprising. The bracelet transformed, nor the desire to be emperor. I might as well hand it over to someone capable. With the end of my speech, the system unexpectedly triggered a hidden mission, Chen Xiao. In the original history of Lin Wui's world, putting on a carefree look, I've laid my cards on the table. I'm done pretending. My true goal is to be a lazy and foolish emperor. The throne is nothing compared to the beauties of the harem. I have neither the ability to govern the country, but now I'm voluntarily handing over the throne. This absurd action caught the assassin sent to kill me completely off guard. He coldly questioned why I would do this. Hearing his words, I suddenly started laughing. Xiao Wenyin was greatly shocked in her heart. He actually knows my identity and purpose. Could this be a trap? After enduring countless hardships, I finally became emperor. So I spoke to her, saying that it's not my time to die yet. She coldly told me to shut up. Just a guy who talks a lot. But I continued, saying I could step down and give the throne to Tusu in exchange. After all, isn't your goal in assassinating me to have Tusu ascend the throne? Instead, I was stopping her. Little did she know, this action only made the concubines in the harem more devoted to me. Although I saved those concubines. But I can't be killed by that guy right now. Otherwise, the mission to destroy the country won't be completed. I panicked in an instant. That despicable person is an important resource to ensure I play the role of a foolish ruler and complete the mission to pledge allegiance. So I hurriedly intervened and said, let those girls go. Xiao looked at me in confusion. She didn't understand why I didn't take the opportunity to escape. Does he really have some extraordinary qualities? However, he no longer showed mercy. He reached for that short blade. This is what you brought upon yourselves. Seeing this scene, it turned out they all thought Xiao was competing for my affection. Watching Xiao being pushed further and further away by the crowd, I couldn't help but feel speechless. At this moment, a huge wave surged in Zhao's heart. Why are these concubines so fond of this foolish monarch? Clearly, she had no cultivation at all. Yet she dared to attack her. But soon, she suddenly felt a chill behind her. She saw one girl after another, like zombies, rushing towards her in waves. Xiao instantly put away the short blade, grabbed his arm with both hands, and fluently flipped the woman over his shoulder to subdue her. This left Xiao feeling quite puzzled as well. I wondered if this woman was crazy. The other concubines also suddenly awakened to this. This guy actually wants to monopolize his majesty through such a trick, but since I've seen through it, I won't let you succeed. Then I saw that the young lady, who realized it first, rushed forward. Although they didn't understand what this meant at the time, they instantly grasped the significance of this ball now. It was the thrill of feeling excitement through role-playing. In their eyes, Zhao's so-called assassination is a passionate expression of love for me. The girls in the audience asked me why it was an exam rehearsal. I directly took out a student uniform. So-called exam rehearsal is actually role-playing. The concubines put on their favorite clothes to happily play games with me. But Asha behind me still thought this was a rehearsal I had planned in advance. they all shouted boldly together. How dare you speak such outrageous words in front of His Majesty? It turned out that just 5 days ago, I told them I was going to hold a cosplay ball. Now he was dressed up like a flashy young lady at my ball, and he had only one purpose for doing this. That was to assassinate me at any cost. I looked in shock at the woman who had suddenly lifted me. At this moment, Xiao had already charged in front of me with a dagger. She noticed my gaze. Lord Xiao found it unbelievable. Then he pulled a short blade from his waist. Ignoring the woman in front of him, he charged at me. He was Xiao, the strongest leader of the Kunlai from the Great Qian dynasty, and my concubines were rushing towards me like crazy. But there wasn't a hint of change on my face. Instead, I was surprised by the sudden deduction of points. Suddenly, I noticed a special lady in the crowd. Sister, I didn't expect an assassin to come specifically to kill me. As soon as I made my entrance, I sent a wave of affectionate rumors toward the ladies present. At the same time, the system's prompt went off. A deduction of 200 profit points was made directly. You can't compete with us. Your Majesty, you are still a bit inexperienced. Just when you could no longer bear the humiliation and were about to take action, a voice suddenly echoed from outside the hall. The Emperor has arrived. I stepped out with the support of a Zhu and a Sha, clearly just a group of ordinary people. Why do their eyes look so terrifying? And from their mouths, Xiao became the little schemer who would stop at nothing to rise to power. Soon someone came over to remind her that although your outfit is quite creative. Meanwhile, a pleasant chime rang out. A girl dressed in purple Western attire stepped into the party. And she is the leader of the Kuan position, Xiao. But soon she felt countless cold and fierce gazes. Could he really be a match for His Majesty? At the same time, the cosplay event I'd been dreaming of was finally held. One by one, stunningly beautiful girls dressed up in all kinds of exotic outfits. And their only goal was to win my favor tonight. Tonight at Qian Yuan Palace, they will surely wait for the right moment. They will take action against His Majesty amid the chaos. However, although they are clever and quick-witted, when it comes to scheming, once outside, Li Tianyuan wore a face full of worry. This plan, the only thing I can't predict is His Majesty. According to reason, a Zhu and a Sha hate two to the core. The final outcome is still unknown. Zhao Zhu was stunned. How could such a foolproof plan possibly fail? However, Li Tianyuan didn't say anything more. He simply walked toward the door on his own. Zhao Zhu's eyes lit up. This move kills two birds with one stone, not only getting rid of Tu Yi, but also making Tu Su bear the blame. But Li Tianyuan told him not to get complacent. Tu Su will bear the infamous reputation of slaying the army. He, having lost his great moral standing, even if he commands an army, is no longer terrifying. After hearing his strategy, tonight would be the best opportunity. So I made some arrangements. I let the Imperial Guards be unusually lax tonight. Now, with Xiao at the forefront, it represents Tu Su. Therefore, whether the assassination succeeds or not, we can use this matter to break the balance that His Majesty has imposed between Tu Su and you and me. Today, His Majesty is in Qianyuan Hall, making a fuss. The palace banquet is crowded and chaotic. If Xiaoyao makes a move against your Majesty, but he quickly realized and questioned why Li Tianyuan would know such confidential information. Li Tianyuan looked down on him, stating that Lord Zhao didn't need to know the specific reasons. However, you are quite lucky. You could say it's a blessing in disguise. He mistakenly believed that the imperial decree was aimed at Tu Yi, and his next target is Tu Yi. Clearly, the Prime Minister Gong Chao was all-powerful, but he was thrown into a panic by this piece of news. This news could very likely cost him his life. Zhao Zhu felt a pang in his heart. How could he? Li Tianyuan interrupted him. Let's listen to some good news first. Although Xiao killed Zhao Xian, Li Tianyuan opened his arms. We share the same stance. You don't need to lie to me. Zhao Xian was murdered 5 days ago on the outskirts of the city. The one who attacked him was none other than the leader of the Kunlai, Xiao. Li Tianyuan revealed a triumphant smile. Of course, it's you. The plan to forge the imperial edict to kill Tu Su has failed. Zhao Zhu's eyes widened instantly. In a fit of rage, he grabbed Li Tianyuan by the collar and told him, I came to deliver a message. One good news and one bad news. Zhao Zhu couldn't help but feel confused. What could possibly be the bad news? Suddenly, a figure walked in. Lord Zhao, what are you waiting for? Zhao Zhu nervously denied it. Then he asked why he came. Li Tianyuan smiled. At the same time, I suddenly sneezed. Is that beauty thinking about me again? 5 days later, Zhao Zhu still hadn't received a reply from Zhao Xian. Even if we travel non-stop, it will take 4 days to get to and from the capital. Within 4 days, Tu Yi won't find out about the imperial decree for now. Before that, I will personally kill him, but is also plotting to assassinate the crown prince. Before the man could recover from tearing up the imperial edict at Xiaoshou Ridge, he heard him say that the reigning emperor is the one we need to eliminate. After speaking, Xiaoyu instructed the man to clean up the place. The Crown Prince Tusu was far away in Beijing. The late emperor appointed Tusu as the crown prince, but now the late emperor has passed away. We should follow the last wishes and assist Tusu. Now Tu Yi has not only usurped the throne. To protect the late emperor Qian Yuan, we may act ruthlessly and use bloody means, but do not forget that we are loyal to the late emperor. Suddenly, a pebble grazed his cheek. Have you forgotten the original intent of our Koan faction? Where there is light, there is shadow. To elevate Koan through hidden potential, we Koan way act in the darkness. The woman removed her hood. As expected, the foolish emperor ordered Crown Prince Tusa to commit suicide. The man appeared hesitant upon hearing this. Since it's His Majesty's decree, isn't our action tonight a bit too indulgent? A sharp dagger had already appeared at his neck. Zhao Xian immediately realized their identity. However, the cold blade gave him no chance to speak. A shadow knelt before Xiao, taking out the decree they had just seized. With just one strike, he killed the two men blocking his path. Suddenly, an eagle's cry echoed. On the high round moon, a figure suddenly stood. But before Zhao Xian could react, Zhao Xian swung his sword, blocking all attacks. In front of him stood two men in black holding knives. Zhao Xian immediately shouted, "These mere rebels dare to intercept the imperial decree?" The fast horse tripped over the rope because it was running too fast. Just as they were getting back up, a flash of fire exploded behind them. Dozens of dark figures suddenly appeared in the air, and they unleashed all the hidden weapons they had prepared. Zhao Xian, who was marching, also sensed something was wrong. He instinctively glanced at the bushes. Seeing the sudden appearance of a rope, Zhao Xian hurriedly shouted for his men to stop, but the soldiers behind him weren't as lucky. With a thud, she fell into the thick bushes. Seeing their leader Xiao fall, the two were unfazed. Zhao's dissatisfied voice suddenly rang out, "Useless. Move." The masked woman leading them had already received a message, but just as she gave the order to take action, she suddenly slipped and instantly lost her balance. Then, they heard a woman scream. He transmitted this incredibly important information. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the forest, a cavalry squad of dozens was riding swiftly towards the northern county, but their movements had already been exposed. "You must see Tusu take his own life, then bring back his head. I want to deliver a message of hatred to His Majesty." And under the eaves of the Zhao residence, a man recorded everything he had just heard. Soon, footsteps echoed outside. A man dressed in armor knelt before him. Zhao Zhua took out a prepared box. "I want you to set off immediately to Beijing. Deliver this imperial decree to the commander of the Northern Army, Tu Su." Zhao Zhua became extremely excited. As long as he eliminated Tu Su and Wu Ya, leaving no rival, wouldn't the world be his to control? Thinking this, he shouted loudly, "Guards!" Still thinks about seizing the throne. Even going as far as forging an imperial decree to order the death of Crown Prince Tusu, because only by doing so can he achieve that elusive imperial power. After forging the decree, however, this line of thought opened a new door for me. I must arrange a new set of equipment for all my concubines in the future. What's with second lady's maid outfit? Everything is arranged. Clearly, a court minister with supreme power. Isn't such an arrangement just a standard for a king of a fallen nation? But soon I suddenly thought of something. I looked seriously at the still bewildered Asha. From now on, I must wear a Taoist robe during battles. This kind of dark humor made Asha feel very uncomfortable. He could just imitate Su Fu from history, refining elixirs. So I told Asha, from now on, as my royal advisor, you will oversee the Imperial Medical Bureau, responsible for refining elixirs and extending my life. Aju instantly showed an expression of immense fear. I secretly felt satisfied with my decision. Azu was born into a merchant family. Compared to silently emptying the state treasury, that must be a piece of cake for her. As for Zhuge Sha, born into a noble family, to help me bring down this country? Soon, I made my decision. As the ruler of a nation, how could I possibly be interested in Miss Aju's wealth? On the contrary, would Miss Aju be willing to manage the lair for me? I was totally blown away. His image became immensely larger in my mind. This is the power of super abilities. So I began to observe carefully. How can I make them utilize their strengths? Packaging oneself as harmless and innocent. Once I realized this, he revealed a sweet and naive smile exclusive to him. I have no special talents, but the only thing I can show off is the vast fortune passed down in my family. However, my grandfather's experiences made me realize that having both of these skills can easily lead to suspicion from others. The premise of revenge is to protect oneself, while also demonstrating value. She came from a family of merchants. From a young age, she had accompanied her grandfather to various business venues. Under the influence of my surroundings, I not only excel at calculating wealth, but also at understanding people's hearts. I didn't say much more. Instead, I looked at Aju. And what are your specialties? Ah Zhu's body trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. She seemed unsure of how to respond. A smile crept onto my lips. I nodded in satisfaction. But then he added that I am also skilled in bedroom arts. Zhu glanced at him speechlessly. I thought to myself, are you serious? It was coming, after all. Asha started counting on her fingers. I am skilled in divination. I am knowledgeable about omens, feng shui, and alchemy. Upon hearing this, I'm sure you know how to demonstrate your additional value, right? Just as they were still thinking about what to do, I suddenly asked them, do you have any special talents or skills? When Yan's heart sank. Moreover, Zhao Zhua has already taken the lead in delivering the imperial edict to him. He is both your ally and your competitor. To gain Tui's trust, you must show value beyond just your appearance. The butcher Yi, doing nothing, looks even scarier. Zhu suddenly remembered what Li Tianyuan had warned her before. This butcher Yi is deeply scheming. Although he is very lustful, he is hard to be deceived by beauty. Clearly, we were all ready to reveal ourselves. We even endured various humiliations. In the end, we yielded to his tyranny. But now, the scene I imagined has not appeared. I would rather be treated like that. However, the system only displays basic information and ability index. I am completely unaware of anything else. I waited and waited but still did not see him. My beloved Zhu also felt immense confusion at this moment. Why hasn't this foolish monarch arrived yet? I didn't engage in any sleazy or inappropriate behavior. Although they were beautiful and lovely, they were sent to eliminate me, right? But since they were sent by Li Tianyuan, they must possess extraordinary qualities. But I misunderstood her look as dissatisfaction. Could it be that Miss Azu also wants to join? The first thing I did after becoming emperor was to call two stunning beauties to bed with me. But just when they were ready to reveal themselves, you truly understand me, my dear minister. Li Tianyuan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Thank you, your majesty, for making the act more realistic. I directly said, tonight, Asha will accompany me to bed. Suddenly, I noticed a murderous gaze from the side. Letting this woman be rude in front of your majesty. I deserve 10,000 deaths. I will now have this woman. I reach out and stop her. Then I pull Zhuge into my arms. I just love shy women like this. We need to switch him out. As expected, Li Tianyuan suddenly knelt down. I failed to properly oversee, and chose the wrong person. I secretly thought to myself, this is bad. Then I heard the sound of someone falling. I just wanted to put on a show of favor. I didn't expect Zhuge to be so disrespectful. Your Highness Li Tianyuan will surely worry about being exposed. I am quite approachable. Then I happily knead his face back and forth. But his expression becomes increasingly distorted. Suddenly, the system pops up an urgent notification. Congratulations, host, for discovering Zhuge's hidden attribute. You seem a bit nervous. This made Li Tianyuan's heart sink instantly. Asha has an introverted personality. Under the pressure of Lord 2, she might reveal too much. I lift his chin to reassure him not to be afraid. The two of them act shy. I am a Zhu. I am a Shah. Hearing their introductions, I stroked my chin and leaned closer to a Shah. I suddenly turned to look at Li Tian. Yuan secretly praised him for doing well. I need this kind of special talent. So I strode up in front of them. State your names. How did he figure it out? And their information was exposed in front of me. Zhuge was approaching the host to seek revenge and destroy the nation. Fan also approached the host for revenge and to destroy the nation. Seeing this, Li Tianyuan finally felt relieved. Just at that moment, he suddenly shouted, these two young ladies are extraordinary. Li Tianyuan's heart skipped a beat. He looked at me in disbelief, and also depraved and violent. Are you afraid? The two immediately swore that as long as they could avenge themselves personally, I will serve without hesitation, even at the cost of my life. With that thought, and inform them of the death of their family's enemy, Tu Qianjun. Although you couldn't avenge them personally, that old man still has a son, Tuin. I can give you a chance to eliminate him, but he's cunning. For over 10 years, Li Tianyuan never mentioned their true identities to anyone. He also imparted all his knowledge and effort to them. Just the day before coming to the palace, Li Tianyuan summoned the two of them. Could it be that there is something wrong with my plan? It turns out that there are two women who are quite special. More than 10 years ago, two great noble families offended the former emperor and were executed. But their only surviving descendants were secretly saved by Li Tianyuan, and asked him if there were any girls here with special skills. Li Tianyuan's expression slightly stiffened. This minister does not understand your majesty's meaning of special skills. His words surprised me a bit. Does this guy really not understand the unspoken language between men? Li Tianyuan felt uneasy inside. I couldn't help but drool uncontrollably. Is this what paradise is like? Just as I was lost in thought, they suddenly shouted in unison, we greet your majesty. I placed my hand on Li Tianyuan's shoulder. We couldn't find the number of people your majesty requested. Saying this, he clapped his hands behind him. and instructed his subordinates to bring the people over. Before long, a group of stunningly beautiful celestial maidens appeared before me. Upon seeing them, I don't want to hear any of this. Then I looked at him with a sly grin. How about the concubines I asked you to select for me? Li Tianyuan quickly explained. Because time was tight, Li Tianyuan reported to me that all former officials had been demoted to commoners. Only the former Crown Prince Tusu remained stationed with the troops outside. So it hasn't been carried out yet. I raised my hand to stop him from continuing. My absurd actions immediately sparked the discontent of many ministers. But, faced with my absolute power, they still chose to comply with my wishes. Since then, a few more days passed. The bloodline of the inheritance chart is only natural. As subjects, we must satisfy him well. The first thing after becoming emperor is to decree that all the beauties in the capital enter my harem, undermining our position in court. Once this was said, Zhao Zhuo was suddenly flustered. Li Tianyuan suddenly laughed. He told him not to worry about his majesty. Even if he doesn't attend court, he can still control the government. By bringing the daughters of officials into the harem, he can directly win over the ministers through marriage alliances. He's also expanding his harem. This series of actions may seem like indulgence, but it's actually a linked scheme targeting us as one. Zhao Zhuo asked him what he meant by that. Because he is confident, and we were immediately summoned to the palace. There's no chance the information leaked, and that's what makes him so terrifying. Not only that, besides avoiding court sessions, he paused, guiding that His Majesty's recent actions were all clever moves with deeper meanings. You just set a plan to embarrass him in the court, and he easily dismantled it. This shows that he fully understands our intentions, but that plan was just decided. If you keep this up, disrespecting His Majesty, what awaits us will be the extermination of our 9 clans. Zhao Zhuo was startled by his angry expression. Li Tianyuan also realized his own loss of composure. This is definitely the rhythm of a foolish monarch, but that guy is bringing about his own demise on the throne. That saves us a lot of trouble. Li Tianyuan, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped. He turned around and angrily scolded Zhao Zhuo to shut up. After leaving the imperial study, Zhao Zhuo was immediately dissatisfied. That foolish Boyi doesn't care about state affairs, but still wants to expand the harem. Instead, he placed his hopes on Li Tianyuan. You must stop this silly boy. But soon I continued to escape. I thought of the easiest way. Let's choose from the female family members of the ministers in the court. But in a rush, I directly interrupted him. Indeed, this matter is very rushed, so our search target is set on the ground. Zhao Zhuo was left speechless by my words. I ignored their ghostly expressions. I continued to emphasize that this matter needs to be resolved quickly. Both of them looked speechless. Zhao Zhuo spoke first, saying the emperor wants to gather beauties from all over the world. I support it. And you're already thinking about your lower half. This person is so shameless. Even the usually calm Li Tianyuan looks confused. He specifically summoned us. Could it be just to recruit a harem? I've decided to gather beautiful women and expand the harem. Upon hearing this, even Zhao Zhuo was so shocked by my decision that he stepped back 2 paces. The former emperor has just been buried. My mind was filled with plans to expand the harem. So I waved my hand and told them I had something to discuss with them. Now I am the emperor. But in the harem, only Zhao Shu remains. It's truly a loss of face. Not only did he predict that Zhao Zhuo would try to suppress him in court, he even brought up the reason of trusting his ministers, leaving no room for rebuttal. Zhao Zhuo's shallow schemes are nothing in front of him. But I didn't think that far ahead. You can't resolve. Li Tianyuan listened and looked as if it were indeed the case. So he really rejected the request to attend court? He's certainly not that simple. Because, in my opinion, that would only add to my troubles. So, I picked up my wineglass. Let's put off this matter of attending court for another day. After all, there are 2 of you. I believe there's nothing. You have ascended the throne now. Shouldn't you also attend court tomorrow to get familiar with it? After saying that, he sneered internally, waiting for you to attend court tomorrow. I'll make you pay for it. Little did he know, I had no intention of attending court at all. Seeing them, I immediately smiled and said, sit. Make yourselves at home. But Zhao Zhuo looked completely disdainful. Grumbling, I found a place to sit down. It's simply a win-win situation. I shouted at the eunuch, I want to see Zhao Zhuo and Li Tianyuan. Tell them to come to the imperial study immediately. A quarter of an hour later, the 2 of them finally strolled into the imperial study. Was to expand my harem 100-fold. Because only in this way can I accelerate my plan for national destruction. Not only can I deduct a large amount of national power points, but it will also provide me with some benefits. After realizing this, I decided to follow their example and take all the women from the officials' families into my harem. I became the eternal emperor above millions. But the first thing I did after ascending the throne There is still a long way to go before clearing the national PowerPoints. Suddenly, I remembered that throughout history, fallen monarchs, in addition to trusting treacherous ministers, also ignored state affairs, forcibly abducted women, and widely accepted concubines. I should have my own plans now. Meanwhile, I looked at the decree you set. Now all I need is a good opportunity, dappled though it may be, to humiliate him thoroughly during his first court session. Let him know who truly calls the shots in this great realm. Li Tianyuan wanted to say something else, but he quickly gave up on persuading. Zhao Zhuo is not a person who does big things. Uncle Zhao replied, I wouldn't dare. Then Zhao Zhuo turned to Li Tianyuan. It seems your plan is going to fail. In that case, I'll rally the ministers. Upon hearing Li Tianyuan's analysis, Zhao Zhuo realized that he had just let his anger cloud his judgment. Then he smiled warmly and helped Zhao Shu up. It was just that my adoptive father was impulsive. You don't blame your adoptive father, do you? Lord Zhao, if the imperial edict is leaked, how could a decree like this be known to you and me? This is Tui's scheme to sow discord. It's also to give you a warning. I don't want the reckless Star Lord, but Zhao Zhuo didn't believe it at all. Don't think I don't know. You despicable woman must have fallen for that pretty boy, and now you're putting on an act for me? Suddenly, a large hand rested on his shoulder. A fierce light flashed in Zhao Zhuo's eyes. He slapped Uncle Zhao across the face, saying, was it you who leaked our opportunity? Uncle Zhao covered his bruised cheek. He whispered, Uncle. He issued this imperial decree. Li Tianyuan ignored him. Instead, he inquired if Uncle Zhao was serious about this matter. Uncle Zhao rubbed his fingers, a bit embarrassed, and said that he was just acting on your majesty's decree, to demote all the 2 royal family members to commoners. As soon as these words were spoken, the 2 old foxes were startled. What on earth is that kid thinking? We just discussed establishing a new residence from among the 2 clan. He immediately came to the town. Seeing the visitor, Zhao Zhuo asked angrily why he came so late. Uncle Zhao said he had important information to share. Lord Tu issued a decree, significantly weakened the influence of the Great Front dynasty. National strength points decreased by 200. As the scene changed, we arrived inside Zhao Zhuo's residence, after Uncle Zhao finished drafting the imperial decree. At this moment, Uncle Zhao's heart is pounding. This is the first time in my life someone has given me a gift. I clearly know that your majesty is tricking me, but why am I still so happy? And I also received the system prompt, but also bear the reputation of a cold-blooded tyrant. I asked you to draft the decree. You can then share this good news with Uncle Zhao. He will definitely be very happy. Consider this information a gift from me to you. I generously told him instead. Of course, it's to increase the difficulty of the game. As soon as this decree is issued, I will not only become a lonely figure without family support. Uncle Zhao looked at me, and the corners of my mouth, which were harder to suppress than AKs, instantly made the hairs on his neck stand up. He hurriedly said that I had overstepped my bounds. Please, your majesty, forgive me. But I did not blame him, so he mustered the courage to ask me why I needed such a decree from you. It turns out I learned from the system rules that, as long as I weaken the influence of the 2 family royal clan, I can deduct a large number of points, and conveniently create the image of a tyrannical, foolish ruler. Remove all members of the 2 clan, including 2 Su, from their noble status. Demote them to commoners. These words stirred a great storm in Zhao Shu's heart. His majesty is courting disaster. To go so far as to strip his own royal relatives of their titles. Go, my beloved concubine. I have faith in you. Zhao Shu blushed slightly. I don't know what kind of edict his majesty wants from you, but I calmly said. I completely gave up on the idea. Then I turned around and shouted to Uncle Zhao behind me. Come write an imperial decree for me. Before Uncle Zhao could react, I had already pushed him to the desk. I simply wrote an imperial edict with a brush, and it scared the princess so much that she turned pale. She even thought this was a plot specifically tailored for her. But I just simply don't know how to use a brush to write. After 2.5 seconds, I explained that this was just a game. And not only will I not kill you, but I will also pretend that I know nothing. I will let you pass on messages. After all, that's what makes the game interesting. There's no point in keeping you around. Uncle Zhao screamed in terror, but then realized he was still in my chamber. I asked him with concern if he'd had a nightmare, but he quietly asked why I didn't kill him. Seeing the person arrive, Uncle Zhao was so scared that he screamed, Foster father, how did you get here? Zhao Zhuo sneered and reached out to grab him. You can't even handle something this simple. But Uncle Zhao cried even harder. While speaking, he suddenly fainted. When he opened his eyes again, Uncle Zhao found himself in a confined space. Have you completed the task I entrusted to you? Yet he still tries to counterattack. I reached out and grabbed his hairpin. You're too impatient. A few words from me and you're already set on killing. That's not how a proper spy should behave. He fell backward. And in that moment, all the spring light was drawn into my eyes. Seeing him whimper like that, I couldn't help but find it a little funny. Clearly, he's so weak in combat. Luckily, I was quick-witted and reacted fast, but he wasn't planning to give up just yet. He forcefully broke free from my grip. He lunged at me again with the hairpin. Unexpectedly, he lost his balance. At this moment, Uncle Zhao had already grabbed a hairpin and lunged at me. There was no time to think. I dodged his attack just in time. I reached out and held him in my arms. Almost. The current national power is 1000. The current impact on the host wouldn't affect the change in national power even if it died. This made me panic in an instant. This is really a mess. What upgrade are you talking about? But he didn't care about my thoughts. He just explained to himself, as long as the host can reduce the national power to below 0, the kingdom task is considered complete. At the same time, the system's voice suddenly echoed, Kingdom system upgrade complete. Big Ben will continue to serve the host. I was completely dumbfounded when I heard that. I'm about to finish the mission and return. I've already created the perfect opportunity for you. Uncle Zhao by the side didn't let me down either. He reached out for the hairpin. The sharp needle gleamed with a cold flash. Then, he quietly tiptoed towards me. Does that mean he's already tired of playing? Then my adoptive father definitely won't let me go. I didn't pay attention to his little thoughts. Instead, I pretended to be tipsy and lay on the table. Come on, bring it on. Otherwise, being an emperor would be too boring. Hearing the edict, I felt a chill all over. My adoptive father deliberately sent me to his side. But in his eyes, is it just a game? Now he's confronting me. I spoke up to tell him not to worry. I don't care about your dealings with Zhao Zhuo in private. Then I grabbed the wine cup and downed it in one go. After all, you were placed here by him to control and monitor me, right? I really enjoy playing this game with him. As soon as I said that, Uncle Zhao felt a jolt in his heart, but outwardly, he tried to remain calm. Your Majesty, what are you talking about? Shu Heir doesn't understand. Creating a perfect opportunity for him. This matter is basically settled, so I proudly bought myself a good drink. Then I called out his name. You're actually the mole Zhao Zhuo sent to spy on me, aren't you? Now, there is only one thing left to be assassinated. Then I can return to the real world. So, I turned to look at the edict, but I noticed the hairpin on his head. All I need to do is provoke him, but I don't care about state affairs. I just take in a harem. All day long, I indulge with my beautiful concubine in the chambers. After trying all of Away 18th, I felt unprecedentedly relaxed. I was stunned for a moment. Then I put on a silly grin. I take back what I just said. This place is simply paradise. I've become an ancient emperor. A figure appeared beside me. I saw Uncle Zhao standing right in front of me, completely unguarded. Suddenly, he showed a shy expression. Your Majesty, I'm here to serve you. Hearing his words, the games aren't fun, and I still have to review memorials. The key is that I don't recognize a single word. Without my phone or computer, I'm going absolutely crazy. At that moment, your offspring is quite amusing, my late emperor. On the other hand, after returning to the chamber, I just lay in bed and slept soundly. But this isn't the life I want. The food isn't tasty. This time, Li Tianyuan remained silent. Previously, they supported Tu Yi because he was the easiest to control among the late emperor's many heirs. But now it seems, this guy doesn't seem to be as incompetent as I imagined. On the surface, it seems to be about his own issues. But in reality, it's just a way to pressure us. Yet Zhao Zhuo still looked furious. I don't care about any of that. I must kill that kid. He implemented new policies. His power was immense. It could be said he was second only to the king, above all others. However, he was subjected to dismemberment after losing the former king's trust. And now Tu Yi has uttered the same words. Do you know the saying? The emperor and the commoners are equally guilty? Do you know where that comes from? These words were spoken by Wei, the Grand Chancellor of Qin, 100 years ago. At that time, Lord Wei was highly trusted by the former king. If we are to go down together, Lord Tu might even exploit the relationships among the three parties to control us. Zhao Zhuo couldn't help but laugh out loud. Are you saying that kid is clever enough to scheme this far? With Tu Su holding a powerful army, it makes us wary in the court. We cannot completely sideline Tu Yi. If we force Tu Yi to pass away, he will allow Tu Su to enter the capital. So, are you suggesting that Tu Yi intentionally destroyed the seal to prevent me from killing Tu Su? Li Tianyuan replied to him. That's right, Tu Su was originally a stumbling block for Tu Yi, but Tu Yi's ascension has already been decided. He is now reconsidering his relationship with Tu Su. Do you think that we, as the late emperor's powerful officials, wouldn't be the first targets for Tu Su to seek punishment from? Tu Yi smashed the imperial seal, which means we have one less bargaining chip against Tu Su. All we can rely on now is him, who is about to ascend the throne. Then he began to point at Li Tianyuan, cursing, you spineless coward. You actually call that kid your majesty. Li Tianyuan angrily rebuked him, you fool. Right now, the Crown Prince Tusu is out there. If the late emperor died under unclear circumstances in the capital, are you really not going to kill me? But they turned a deaf ear to it. After leaving the main hall and returning to the study, Zhao Zhuo immediately insisted on killing Tui. It's not a big deal. Your Majesty, you should go back and rest early. After saying this, Li Tianyuan directly left the hall with Zhao Zhuo. Seeing this, I hurriedly shouted at them, the emperor is not above the law, and should be punished like any commoner. Li Tianyuan suddenly stopped him. Your Majesty is joking. The entire world belongs to you. What's more, it's just a jade seal. If it breaks, it breaks. Aren't you going to kill me right away? Let me complete the mission of destroying the nation. Zhao Zhuo angrily pointed his finger at my nose. You can't even say a complete sentence after so long. Just as he was about to explode with rage. Moreover, it is a token for the emperor to command his officials and heal the world. And yet, such a treasure was shattered into pieces by me. Breaking the seal is a serious provocation to this extent. I don't believe you can stand it. The hall instantly fell silent. But I just feigned an innocent look. I'm sorry. I slipped. You must know that the Imperial Jade Seal symbolizes great power and authority. His calm demeanor surprised me a bit. Then he suddenly broke into a smile. Let's see if you can still keep your composure after this. So I grabbed the jade seal and threw it away. With a clang, Uncle Zhao grabbed Zhao Zhuo from behind. He told him to calm down. At this moment, Li Tianyuan stepped forward to mediate. We all share the same goal. How about we calm down first? Listen to his threats. But I laughed even harder. Come on, hurry up and kill me. Just when Zhao Zhuo couldn't hold back and was about to come up and kill me. And my act of putting the imperial seal on my head without any defense truly scared Zhao Zhuo to the core. You brat, you're already being arrogant before ascending the throne, huh? If I have the ability to support you up there, I also have the ability to kill you. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhao instantly became a fangirl. So His Highness is such a tough guy after all. That line who agrees, who opposes is just too cool. Your Highness, all those previous foolish acts were just a performance. Snatched away the imperial jade seal that belonged to me. Now I am the emperor. From now on, I will safeguard the jade seal. Who lives, who dies, is up to me. Come on, just take me out right now. I've become a puppet emperor. Yet I'm being manipulated by two treacherous ministers. But I just flipped the table. After the seal was taken, Zhao Zhuo screamed hysterically. Let me not act impulsively. I must stay calm. But I didn't listen to his words at all. In a world where girls are controlled by others. Looking at the glittering imperial seal in his hand, I snatched it away immediately. If you're not going to let me live well, then I won't let you either. I know what he means. As long as the crown prince is killed, I won't have to worry about securing the throne. But the price to pay would be letting them control me like a puppet. I don't want to live even one day. As he said that, he strode toward me. Take out the imperial seal that was prepared long ago. As long as your majesty issues a decree, letting Tusu join the late emperor, then there's nothing to worry about. Zhao Zhuo once again speaks sarcastically. The late emperor's edict was to have the crown prince Tusu, who leads the army outside, ascend the throne. Your Highness is probably worried that this throne you've acquired might not be secure. Although he won't rise from his coffin to kill us, Tusu is a different story. At that moment, Zhao Zhuo suddenly spoke. Your Highness, you seem worried that you might not be able to keep this throne steady. In response to his provocation, I simply replied to him calmly. I can't wait to lose my grip on the throne. To lose the kingdom as soon as possible. Also appeared before me, Li Tianyuan, former Right Chancellor, Zhao Zhuo, former Left Chancellor. In that moment, I only felt my back drenched in cold sweat, because these two guys were the treacherous officials who supported my ascension to the throne. At this moment, an unpleasant voice interrupted me. Your Majesty, you seem to have something on your mind. It was only then that I noticed, there were actually two guys down below. Their messages. Uncle Zhao's eyes widened in an instant, because in that very moment, she actually felt like she'd been seen through. And I was also sizing up this pretty young lady in front of me, from the peaks down to the valleys. But today, he was just staring blankly at a bracelet. I suddenly turned to look at the woman beside me. But right after, lines of text appeared before me. It turned out to be all the information about this woman. And she was actually a spy sent by the treacherous officials to monitor me. The bracelet once again transmitted a voice. As long as you let the previous dynasty perish, you can return to reality. My strange reaction left the woman serving me beside me quite puzzled. What's up with this useless person? He used to give me a lewd smile every time he saw me. A voice rang in my ears. Kingdom Adventure System activated successfully. You can call me Deben. I feel completely stunned. The great Deben of the gods. And what the hell is Wanghua Ben Xian? But when I came to my senses, I found that my surroundings had changed completely. Not only had I become the useless fourth prince, but I was also pushed to become the new emperor by a group of treacherous ministers. just when I thought my later life was doomed. I was holding a freshly opened roll of toilet paper, watching a cute girl on the screen. But a line of small text appeared on the screen: if you could return to the past, which era would you want to go back to? Disturbed, I directly started filming. I expressed my inner anger with the most classic words. The king, however, doesn't want to be king. Simply because I don't understand the art of ruling at all. Nor do I have the dominance of Qin Shi Huang, who conquered lands. Yet those treacherous ministers are crazily trying to make me king. However, just not long ago,